Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. Great to be back with you for another week of our program. This is On the Move. This is a show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. My name is Mac Worley III, and we've got a lot to get to today. So let's start out first things first. Let's get the business out of the way with our featured topics. I'll give you guys a heads up of what we're going to be talking about. And as always, you're welcome to call in with your own topics. Anything that you'd like to talk about is on the table. So feel free to call in, make your voice heard. The telephone number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Our featured topics this week will be the troubled times that we have coming ahead of us here. Guaranteed, there are going to be some problems that we're going to be facing. And I believe that we're headed for very troubled times. And no matter who gets elected president of the United States, by the way, I think we're going to be facing some serious problems. So I want to talk about that. And in addition, how the outcome of this election will actually affect these issues. The president will matter, but it won't be the game changer that we all may think it does. But this is just my opinion. I'm happy to talk to you guys about it, hear what you have to say. Also, I want to talk about what I believe the two responsibilities that the federal government ought to have. I'm going to be talking about this based on constitutional principles that our founders believed in, and I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it. In addition, I want to talk about how we can't pretend that evil people do not exist in the world. I want to talk about how the left and the right both act like there is no such thing as evil from time to time. And I will make some points about it. I'm going to point out specific instances where both the left and the right does this. I want to talk about American exceptionalism. What is this? What is American exceptionalism? And what's the difference between that and nationalism, by the way? Also, we got a bunch of other news stories that we're going to be getting to if we have time today. I want to talk about Hillary Clinton's comment about an Australian gun ban worth looking at. I want to talk about a conservative meeting that was ended with a police swarm. There was a leftist professor that says women can't use guns effectively. Hopefully we'll have time to get into the privatization of space exploration, i.e. Virgin Galactic. I think this is a very interesting topic that I'm really excited to get into. And last but not least, and actually we may talk about this next, Ohio's marijuana legislation efforts, issues 2 and 3, what you need to know before voting. If you are an Ohio listener, I would really appreciate it if you would give us a call. Again, that number is 360-450-5625. I want to hear what you have to say on, first of all, just marijuana legalization in general. In fact, let's apply this to everybody. Even if you're not in Ohio, feel free to give us a call. What do you think about legalizing marijuana? Are you for it? Are you against it? And then I want to talk specifically about the issues that's coming to the Ohio ballot. Now, it's November 1st, and it's important that we discuss these things because, we need to know what's going on in our ballots. But there are some conflicting interests here with this issue in Ohio. And in fact, we're going to get to that when we come back from a break. But before we do, I just want to give you guys a heads up. Check us out at our website, On The Move Show. Follow us on Spreaker.com/On The Move Show. Like us on Facebook.com/On The Move Show. Follow us on Twitter at On The Move Show. And subscribe to us on YouTube, YouTube.com/On The Move Show. Anyway, at this point, we're going to cut to our first commercial break of the day. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and just get right into this Ohio marijuana legalization issue. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us, gang. So we have a caller here on the line. I'm going to go ahead and take this call. Hey, caller. First of all, what's your name and where are you calling from? Hey, caller, are you there? Oh, looks like we lost the call. Okay. We'll just go ahead and move forward here. Let's get into some of the other topics that we were already going to talk about. We were talking about the marijuana issue that's coming to the Ohio ballot. It's issue 2 and it's issue 3. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because these are conflicting ballot measures. Now, the first one that I'd like to point out here is... Oh, actually, before we get into this again, here we have a call. Okay. Hey, caller, where are you calling from, and what's your name? Hello.
Hello, Mac.
Hey, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Tom McCurgan in Coquille with Oregon, 3%ers.
Yes, sir. Okay. So I was expecting your call. I actually wanted to get into this topic with you. From what I understand, you are trying to help get some information about the Second Amendment ordinance that's coming up in this November special election ballot. From what I understand, you have a little bit more info on it. So can you tell me, first of all, what is this ballot? What is this ordinance?
The ordinance is titled the Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance. It's 6-151 on the Coos County ballot. And myself and Rob Taylor, he's with Coos County Watchdog, and he began the petition filing a initiative through the elections office because our Coos County commissioners, 2 of 3, would refuse to protect our Second Amendment rights against Senate Bill 941 that the Oregon State Senate passed, which we feel violates the U.S. and Oregon constitutions, specifically the Second Amendment. The right to be free of molestation by the government, but they've attacked us every which way they can with ammunition and extended background checks and doing background checks on personal property, firearms. They just gone way too far and gone above and beyond the tyranny that we feel is happening here today in America. So we went ahead and filed a 6-page ordinance to put on the ballot of the Coos County voters, and it doesn't become retroactive against the state law of 941, but it's more of like a symbolic gesture. The day after tomorrow is when we'll have the results in, whether or not it passed, and it's going right alongside of another ballot measure about the lodging tax. So a lot of people are voting no on the lodging. Many are voting yes on the Second Amendment issue. Basically, what will happen is we'll end up going to court on this to find out, get to the meat of our concerns about 941 being unconstitutional. So if this goes to court, then we'll find out the exact measures of what is legal and what's not legal about this law. So that's what's going to happen, basically. When the State House and Senate began this law with Senator Prozansky as the chief petitioner, they put in an emergency clause which didn't allow the citizens of Oregon to rebut any of the bill that they brought forward, which basically is against our Constitution and our Oregon and state U.S. But in actuality, this is going to help open the door to find out what is legal and what is not, because they put in a like I said, an emergency clause. We couldn't even put in our words about it. We couldn't fight it. Couldn't say anything. They didn't listen to the people. So it's basically arbitrary and unilateral decision they made. And they're using all kinds of stuff like saying that the 80% of Oregonians favor extended background checks, which is total fabrication. So that's where we're at now. We're very hopeful that it's going to pass day after tomorrow.
Alrighty. Yeah, so the article that you linked me is from the worldlink.com, excuse me. I was trying to find who wrote this article, but there's no author listed here. I want to read a section of this out of here because this is basically the anti-position of where you're coming from. It's the anti-Second Amendment preservation ballot, I'm guessing, is the name of this here. So as far as what they're saying, though, and I want to give you my opinion. I'd like to hear what you have to say. They say, in other words, the Second Amendment activists behind this ballot measure want a single elected politician to decide what's legal. Because basically, and this is my words, he's referring to the sheriffs being the ones that will be required to determine whether any law or regulation pertaining to the right to bear arms violates the U.S. or Oregon Constitution. This person who wrote this article says that that's wrong. One of the cherished provisions in the U.S. Constitution is the separation of powers between legislative, administrative, and judicial sections. This ballot proposal would effectively erase that separation between administrative and judicial responsibilities and make the county sheriff the sole arbiter of what the law is and what it isn't. That's a notion from medieval times when the Lord's sheriff declared what was law and order in order to keep serfs in line. We reject that notion. We rejected that notion hundreds of years ago. Okay, so first of all, I just want to point out this is actually incorrect. What he's saying when somebody is given an elected office position, and even if they're not, even if they're working for the government in many situations, like if you're in the military or in law enforcement, you're required to swear an oath to the Constitution. And when it comes to that oath, you're swearing an oath to this document that you'll uphold it more so than any other laws that or orders that you receive. It all ultimately comes back to this document. You have to measure what am I being told to do? Is it constitutional? That's your first step. And every single person in the government is required to make this determination whether it is in fact constitutional. So first of all, it's not wrong, and secondly, this is a check and a balance that we don't really hear about very often, and the left media, they really don't like to talk about, is this whole idea that each individual who is the enforcement arm of this federal, state, or local leviathan, whatever you want to look at it as, each person enforcing the law is in fact a check and a balance themselves, because if they refuse to comply with some unconstitutional demand, that law can be nullified. And in my opinion, now this is just my opinion, I don't think that much harm can be done by somebody refusing to enforce a law. Unlike what this gentleman is referring to, I'm assuming this is a guy. I don't know. They don't have anything listed as far as the name for who wrote this article, but I'm assuming that this person, when they say Lord Sheriff declaring what is law and order, that's a sheriff that's determining the law, creating the law. But somebody who's just saying, I'm not going to enforce that law, that is not, especially if their reason behind it is constitutionally oriented, that is not...
Well, let me break that down for you, Mac.
Yeah, go for it.
First off, the article was written by the editorial board of the World Paper. The World Paper is a left-wing rag. Mm-hmm. They pick and choose which amendments they like or don't like, but I'll bet you they sure do like the First Amendment, don't they? And so,
unless somebody's saying something they don't like, and then they want to shut you down.
And so that was written by the editorial board of the World, by several people involved. Editor Larry Campbell is one of those. And basically, what they're saying is totally wrong. They have no working knowledge of the Constitution. And first off, they use the word administrative. It's judicial, executive, and legislative.
Yeah,
branches. Three have to work to equal out the other two. So what happens is they put this ludicrous information in there about the sheriff having to be the sole arbiter of what is constitutional or not. As a former police officer, I can tell you this: every officer, from the patrolman on up to the chief and the sheriff, every single day, they have to themselves gauge what is constitutional in the law. If it violates the Constitution, they cannot enforce it, right? So they themselves must know the Constitution, which some of them do not, but they have to know what they're swearing to and what they're enforcing. Like, say, for instance, the Fourth Amendment, the right to be secure in your homes and papers and effects. And if there's certain hoops you got to jump through to do a search of someone's property, and those are constitutional in scope. The same thing with if a person invokes his Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination, then that officer has to stop the questioning, correct? So, therefore, they're having to gauge the constitutionality of their actions in any law that comes before them. They need to look at this SB 941 and see how it violates the Constitution. If there's any suggestion that it does, they cannot enforce that. Then they would be violating their oath that they've sworn to uphold. Now, if people don't understand the constitutional rights, how do they know that they're not being violated as we speak? So we have to be educationally aware of what's going on and know the history and the foundation through the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers that describes what, how, and who the reason for the Constitution. You see, we have over 700 years. Our founders used 700 years of historical significance and laws going back to the early kings of England. And you've got the 1100 Charters of Liberty. You've got several other English documents that basically, like the Magna Carta of 1215. Mm-hmm. You see, it goes back 115 years to the beginning of that. And our founders said that they said, quote, our fathers guarantee our rights through this history. You see, so they're talking about their fathers and what they did with English law. They found the tyrannical areas of it, and they stopped it. And so now our people who are uneducated in our government are starting to do the same thing.
Well, so regarding this Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance, the vote is on, you said November 3rd, right? That's when you guys are voting on it in Oregon?
It's being voted on now. They mail in their ballots, and so we'll have the results on the 3rd.
Okay.
We'll know what it's after that.
Okay. And if ultimately this is going to end up coming, if this passes, this will end up going to court to basically determine if SB 941 is unconstitutional or not. And if it is, right, then the courts will make the decision. I think this is a good idea to challenge this in court. Obviously, SB 941 is infringing upon the right to keep and bear arms. It's criminalizing the transfer of possession, not ownership, of a firearm. So, you know, we've talked about it in great detail on the show. I'm happy that you guys are doing this. Any of you Oregon voters out there that are in Coos County, I highly recommend that you guys vote yes on the Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance. Tom, do you have anything else you'd like to say about this? The importance of this? Any other points that you'd like to make?
I'd like to say that knowing what our foundation was and maintaining that, you know, our founders it cost them their ease. It cost them their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Not only that, not just the fighters, but the families of those people. We can't just let them their memory go in vain because it was over 200 years ago. These people had lives. Their lives were interrupted just like ours are being now. I feel that we need to emulate our founding fathers and do exactly what they had in mind and what they did, because they had the answer. These weren't a bunch of old, white-wigged old men that a lot of them were in their 20s and 30s that devised this, and they were wordsmiths. They knew what these things meant. That's why they devised them and took so many years to get them ratified, you see. So they weren't stupid. These people were brilliant. We couldn't even hold a candle to them now, but those lackeys who don't even know about the Constitution think it's an old, outdated parchment that doesn't apply today. Well, it still does, and people will use it when they need it, particularly the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, Eighth Amendment, all of this for, you know, when they go to court and being charged with something. But, you know, they don't care about it until they end up needing it.
Exactly, and even the fact that they get to, you know, disparage the Constitution itself, they're using their First Amendment right to do so. You know, so it's comical that they say we don't need it.
Aside from the Bible, it's the greatest civil rights document that the world has ever known or will ever know, Mac. It's an amazing document that people, if they only understood it and the fundamentals of it, they'd be 100% behind it.
I'm
we
with
need to
you.
get into this and start teaching people how to go about this and protect their lives and their homes and their property.
Yes, sir. I'm with you, brother. I appreciate you calling in and letting us know about this. Do you guys have a website where people can go get more information about the Second Amendment ordinance?
You bet. They can go to CoosCountyWatchdog.com, and there's a link on there. It says it's a little photograph of the moniker for that ordinance. They can click on that and they can read the ordinance there. And they only got a couple days to get their ballot in. So please, let's get this done so we can get our rights back and secure them and maintain them.
Yes, sir. All righty. Well, thanks so much for giving us a call. Let us know about this. I appreciate it, Tom.
You bet. Thank you, Mac. You just have a wonderful show, and we appreciate getting out there. So, and thank all your listeners too.
Thank you, sir. All right, you take care.
Okay. Good night now.
All righty. All right, guys. So I think that's really important. If I know a lot of you guys are out there on the Pacific Northwest. Many of you guys are Oregonians. I highly, highly recommend that you look into this ordinance. This will take you guys into a situation where we can actually challenge SB 941. It's an extremely, extremely draconian gun control law, and it is absolutely infringing upon your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. This needs to be challenged. You need to vote this through. This is very important. All right, so let's move on. I was talking just a little bit ago about these Ohio-initiated ballots that they're actually going to make constitutional changes. This is very important to note as well. These are changing the Ohio state constitution. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because there are two things that are near and dear to my heart, important issues. And first of all, number one, I am from Ohio originally. That was where I was born and raised. So Ohio always will hold a special place in my heart. But secondly, this is the marijuana issue. This is the issue of people being able to choose what they put into their body. Extremely, extremely important. And I think ultimately, when it boils down to this will be a non-issue in 10, 15 years. Every state will have marijuana legalized, minimum marijuana legalized. Get the government out of the way of people, because these kind of laws that are trying to prohibit things, they don't work. They just don't work. They end up causing the problems that they attempt to fix, as all government answers do. When the government steps in to fix a problem, it creates more of the same problem that they actually tried to fix in the first place, because it doesn't work. The government can't solve your problems. Ever. You can never rely on the government to solve your problems without creating some other unintended consequence down the line, okay? So with gun control, we see it on the right. This is a difference, and this is one of the things that frustrates me. The right-left difference, okay? Lefties, they have no problem. They think that it's okay to prohibit everything except for drugs. And, all drugs should be legalized, and they understand that prohibition doesn't work. The left gets that side. But then they want to ban guns. And then on the right says, okay, we understand that prohibition doesn't work for guns and it creates more crimes, but let's go ahead and try to ban drugs, all drugs, all right? Not even just marijuana, but all drugs. Both sides understand that prohibition doesn't work, but they get confused and they want to use government again. And it's all because there's interest groups on each side that are clamoring for it. Look, prohibition just doesn't work. That's not the government's job, first of all, but prohibition doesn't work. Nonetheless, let's look at what's going on with these Ohio initiated ballots. And the only reason why I know about this is because my mom actually called me and was asking me about these. She says, hey, which one of these should I vote for? And she thinks that marijuana should be decriminalized. But after looking at this, she originally said, okay, I'm going to vote yes on 3 and no on issue 2. All right, that was what she had thought, because she wanted to have marijuana legalized. And I'm looking at this, and okay, so this is pretty upsetting, because I see here where companies or private interests have basically tried to set themselves up with a monopoly. This is very, very frustrating for me, because they have taken a golden opportunity to put marijuana legalization on the ballot, and then they have screwed it up. They have completely screwed it up and turned it into a Again, this is crony corporatism. This is the collusion of government and private interests. Issue 3. It's the Ohio Marijuana Legalization Initiative. It is an Ohio-initiated constitutional amendment. Now that's interesting. A constitutional amendment on the ballot for November 3rd, 2015. Now, why is this a constitutional amendment? Why do they have to make a change to the Constitution? Is marijuana illegal in the Constitution in Ohio? I actually don't know specifically. I didn't research this part, but what I will say is that I know for a fact that it's actually against the Ohio State Constitution to create a monopoly. So therefore, you have to create a constitutional amendment to get around that barrier. Because if you create something in the Constitution, you put a new amendment on, you can supersede one of the old ones, according to the logic of it. Anyway, so voting yes on Issue 3 in Washington would legalize the limited sale and use of marijuana. And that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. It would also create 10 facilities with exclusive commercial rights to grow marijuana. Now, these 10 facilities just so happen to be owned by the people who created this initiative. So these people had a commercial interest in getting this passed. They own the 10 facilities that will be given the commercial rights to grow marijuana. So voting yes on Issue 3 is going to be creating a marijuana cartel controlled by private interest that no one else can get in the game. Why? Why did they have to ruin it? You had a golden opportunity to get this on the ballot again. People are in jail. People are suffering. People are being sent away and separated from their families because of a victimless crime. Victimless crime. People have records now. They can't get jobs. You're making it harder for them. You know, and the whole idea of, oh, drugs will ruin your life, so let's go ahead and throw you in jail and give you a record, make it impossible for you to get a job and be competitive in the free market. And that will ruin your life. It doesn't make any sense. So my recommendation is that you guys vote no on Issue 3. Yes, marijuana will continue to be illegal in Ohio, just as it always had. Nothing will have changed, and that sucks, but there's always next year. But this year, they're doing it wrong. You're using the government to create monopolies and a marijuana cartel. Do you really believe in this? Do you really think that this is the way to do it? No. You don't want to give exclusive commercial rights to grow marijuana to only a few who own the areas that the constitutional amendment says. And it's important to note that the Ohio Constitution specifically prohibits monopolies. And this is creating a monopoly. So, let's move to Issue 2. Issue 2 is the Ohio-initiated Monopolies Amendment, and it's slated to appear on the Ohio ballot on November 3rd, 2015, as a legislatively referred constitutional amendment as well. Voting yes on this issue would likely prevent Issue 3 from taking effect and would allow the Ohio Ballot Board to regulate future ballot measures dealing with monopolies. Okay, so basically, what it means is that if there is here, I'll just go ahead and read the actual legislation here, or the ballot here. Under the amendment, the Ohio Ballot Board would regulate initiatives concerning monopolies. If the board decides an initiative certified for the ballot creates an economic monopoly or special privilege for any non-public entity, including individuals, corporations, and organizations, then two questions would appear on the ballot. The first question would ask, shall the petitioner, in violation of this division, I'm not going to give you the section here because it's boring, part of the Ohio State Constitution, be authorized to initiate the constitutional amendment that grants or creates a monopoly, oligopoly, or cartel specified or determines a tax rate or confers a commercial interest, commercial right, or commercial license that is not available to other similarly situated persons. The second is the original question that was certified for the ballot. If both questions were approved, the amendment would take effect. So basically, let me make this really simple here. Issue 2 is asking, is this going to create a monopoly? Is this going to give somebody, some private institution, some corporation, organization, or individual non-public entity, will these people be given some kind of special privilege that not all of us have in a similar situation similarly situated persons would have the right to. So, for example, you pass this issue 3, and you create this private marijuana cartel that has the right, out of these 10 facilities, to grow and distribute marijuana, and no one else does through a constitutional amendment. I think you should vote yes on issue 2 because, of course, who wants to have the government collude with private companies to create monopolies? This is how monopolies get created. By the way, you always hear the left talking about, oh, monopolies are so bad. You've got the corporate guys over there. They're all making it hard for everybody. It's anti, trust, all this stuff. They don't know what they're talking about. The first thing first, all right? Monopolies are created when the government colludes with private corporations to either give them complete control, exclusive commercial rights, start issuing licenses for things that everyone should have a right to do, and now you have to get permission from the government, creating bureaucratic layers between like a private company and doing what they want. All right, these kind of regulations and control, licenses, all these other stuff, it's not hurtful to the big guys. All of that stuff is not hurtful to the big guys. In fact, the big guys are the ones that want it. For example, let's talk about Monsanto, okay? You may not be aware, but Monsanto, they got the Roundup hybrid seeds, the ones that can withstand the pesticides being sprayed on them and stuff. Well, they lobby for more regulations. Why would they want more regulations on their self? Because they can afford it. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They can afford the new equipment, or to actually follow the new regulations, to hire the army of lawyers it takes to figure out how to follow these regulations. But you know who's hurt? All their competition, all the little guys, the small farmers, all of those people who can't hire, all these lawyers, who can't get these crazy, non-necessary pieces of equipment that the government is now mandating. And what do they have to do? These small farmers, they go out of business because they can't compete against Monsanto. Again, government creates the monopolies, not business. Of course, every business, if they could get a monopoly, they'd want it. But the problem is that if you're making a ton of money, let's say we're talking about a completely free market, and there's only one company that produces, let's say, a certain kind of chip, a microchip, all right? And they are the only ones that are producing this chip. And they can just skyrocket the price up to whatever they want it to be because they know there's no other competition. Well, what is that going to do? It's going to incentivize others to create some other alternative to that chip or be able to make that chip themselves. So what are they going to do? They're going to get into that, and then they're going to give lower prices than the other guy, or maybe continue to have the same prices jacked up. Say, hey, we can make a ton of money. These monopolies over here are charging a crap load, so we'll do the same. Well, what's going to happen is there's going to be competition, and they're going to lower their price, and then that's going to drive the price down, and this monopoly is going to go away. The company that's not willing to lower their price is going to go out of business. That's the only way it works. This is clear. This is so simple. It's such a simple process. But when you get the government between the consumer and the products, that's when the monopolies start to happen. When you get the government between the business and their services, that's when the monopolies start to happen. So, Ohioans out there, vote no on issue 3. I know that you want to have marijuana legalized. It sucks that people are getting harassed by police, arrested, detained, their property stolen, spending time in jail and in court, separated from their families, getting stuff on their record now showing that they have some kind of criminal conviction and now they can't compete in jobs. I understand. That sucks. But there's always next year. You guys screwed it up this year. You screwed up. I'm sorry, you did. You screwed up. It's time to say, you know what, we messed up, and let's vote no on issue 3. Sorry, next year we'll have to legalize marijuana, and vote yes on issue 2. Who wants to have more monopolies? I don't think anybody does. So vote yes on issue 2, no on issue 3. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break. When we do, we're actually going to talk about some history that's going on. So we'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us through the break. All right, so I want to talk about a little bit of history today, something that we haven't talked about in a while. We have actually not done this segment in a while, and I'm going to see if I can actually bring this back. I haven't done this day in history segment in quite a while. So let's go ahead and play this bumper. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go.
This day in history.
Because people have got to know whether the president's a crook. Well, I'm not crook.
Yesterday,
what country can do for you.
December 1941.
And the people who knock these buildings down.
A date which will live in infamy.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
All right, this day in history. You guys may have noticed that today was daylight savings time. We have fell back our time. Well, I believe for me, I don't know what it was for you, but at I think it was 1 or 2 a.m. It went back to 1 a.m. So we gained an extra hour, and I wanted to just kind of talk briefly about this because this is an interesting concept. The idea of us all collectively getting together and deciding that we're going to gain or lose an hour of sleep. And I thought it was interesting. So anyway, I want to bring up some of the history here. Daylight saving time has been used for about 100 years. The idea was conceived, though, many years before. And this is an article on timeanddate.com. And it's titled History of Daylight Savings Time, DST. So ancient civilizations are known to engage in a practice similar to modern daylight savings time, where they would adjust their daily schedule to the sun's schedule. For example, the Roman water clocks use different scales for different months of the year. Benjamin Franklin, by the way, he's, as we all know, the American inventor and politician. He wrote an essay called An Economic Project for Diminishing the Cost of Light to the editor of the Journal of Paris in 1784. In the essay, he suggested, although jokingly, that Parisinians, I think is how you say that, Parisinians, people who hail from Paris, could economize candle usage by getting people out of bed earlier in the morning, making use of the natural morning light instead. So, I just thought it was kind of interesting that we would talk about this here and how we've used it in the United States. This is one of those ideas that I think it illustrates how government can be used for the good, okay? And I don't mean forcing people, because no one's forcing you to change your clock, although, I mean, I guess if you're talking about on your cell phone, that changed automatically. I guess you could change your time zone and do whatever you want on your phone that way. But regardless, no one's forcing you to change how you live your life. We've all just kind of gotten together and agreed that on this day we're going to fall back an hour or go ahead an hour in time, and that will, as a collective, we've decided that, yeah, this is a better way to use it. You know, we'll follow the sun. This is a common sense measure that we've used government to get this here in the United States. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I thought it would be something important to note. But this is one of those things that it's government use, but it's not necessarily coercive government use. And that's one of those things I think we should illustrate. Also, we got a message on Twitter from Mark on Twitter. He says he was talking about the monopoly thing that we were just talking about last segment, how government is used to create monopolies when they collude with private interests. And he's talking about how Amazon, they support sales tax on internet purchases, and it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt Amazon. It's going to hurt the little guy. The people who want to make small purchases or small sales over the internet, and they can't afford to go through all this bureaucratic nightmare of trying to get a license to sell over the internet, trying to get make sure that Uncle Sam is getting their cut of sales tax and all that and all this. It's not going to hurt Amazon or these billion-dollar corporations. It's going to hurt the little guy. That is why the left, they just don't seem to understand that they want to prevent monopolies, and they think that they can do that by having more and more regulations. Everything, all these companies have to go through the government to get their little permission slip. More red tape, more bureaucracy, but it's all in the name of safety and the collective good and all this stuff, because that's not gonna end badly at all. It's never happened badly in history, right? When people only worry about collective goods and not the individual, right? Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our first featured topic. Actually, I guess this is the second one. We kind of skipped ahead a little bit here. But technically, our first one here is the troubled times that we're headed. And no matter what happens in this next election, no matter who is elected president of the United States, we have some serious difficulties on the horizon. We've got, I would say, this is my opinion, the largest problem that we have to deal with is, of course, our national debt, and in addition to that, I would consider a linked problem with that is the stock market bubble that we've created. And the only reason why the stock market bubble is there is because we still have all this money that we're borrowing and digitizing, and it has allowed us to pump billions and billions and billions of dollars into the stock market to artificially inflate it. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier, guys. Government says, "Oh my goodness, there's a problem. The stock market is going to collapse. These banks, because the government." Now, keep this in mind. They always blame the greedy bankers for the Great Recession. By the way, if you think this is great, stick around, gang. It's about to get really great, because the effects that you felt from this recession are going to be like nothing compared to what you're going to experience when the stock market bubble crashes. But let's go back. Let's explain how we got this. They talk about easy lending. Oh yeah. The banks, they were just greedy and they wanted to make a buck. Well, the government stepped in and made them make loans to people that they had no business giving loans to people. The government said they had to in order to be fair, because it was disproportionately, they were disproportionately not giving loans to African Americans. So they had to give loans to African Americans. Okay, well, when they start giving out these loans and the loans aren't getting paid back, we start heading into the recession. That's what caused the too big to fail, blah 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 blah. Anyway, so now we go into a bailout and we start bailing out these banks. By the way, FYI, guys, if they wouldn't have bailed out the banks, we would be fine by now. We would be fine by now. Things would have settled. The market would have corrected itself. The free market would have taken over. Things would have fixed itself. Yeah, we would have had trouble. We would have had to weather that storm. But we're still going to have to weather the storm. The fact that the government stepped in and created a bigger problem than was there from the banks, the easy lending, it was government coerced easy lending, created the Great Recession, created the issues with the banks, and then we bail out the banks again. So now we're just adding fuel to the fire. We're delaying the storm that's coming. You cannot delay the storm. It only makes it worse. One day you have to face the music. One day your bills come due. You can't just keep paying off a credit card with another credit card and hope that nothing will happen. Eventually things will all work out without making any budgetary changes, without trying to change your fiscal lifestyle. You can't just continue to spend. And that's what the left doesn't get. They just think that we can spend our way out of debt. I sure wish that was possible. I sure wish that was a reality. But I'm sorry, they're not dealing in realities. They're dealing in this utopian little world of wishes that they can make when they throw coins into a well. You know, I wish I wished on this star tonight and have everything I could ever want. Look, that's not the way the world works. I'm sorry. You can't spend your way out of debt. It's just not possible. So the stock market bubble, all right? We start pumping. We see that, okay, the stock market's not really doing too well, guys. Hey, gang, I know we bailed out the banks, but we need to stimulate the stock market and make it grow through quantitative easing. 1, 2, 3. Who knows how far this is going to go? I'm sure this is going to be, quantitative easing 17. In the future, if we make it that far. But anyway, they keep pumping billions and billions of dollars into the stock market, and it doesn't take a genius or a stock market expert to understand that this will not last. The system cannot last. And it's also important to note that your dollars are being stolen from you without them even ever having to tax you. It's a secret. It's a hidden tax. Every time that they print money, every time that they digitize money, every time that they add one more dollar to the currency that is currently in circulation, every time that they do that, they devalue your dollar. Every time. So they're stealing your savings. They're stealing money from you without even having to do anything because they control the flow. They can continue to have as much money as they want by printing and digitizing it, and that's fine for them. But what it does is it decreases the value of your money. So your money is worth less and less and less. And if they don't turn off that flow of digitization of money, creating new money, if they don't turn that back, your money will eventually be worthless. We'll end up like the Weimar Republic, where kids were playing with bricks of money in the streets, building, pyramids and climbing on top of them. Our money, our dollar, is not going to be worth the paper that it's printed on. Now, I know this seems far-fetched. I know it seems ridiculous, but it's not. Bubbles pop. That's what they do. We've created a huge, huge stock market bubble, and this is all the government's fault. All of it. You're trying to artificially prop up and stimulate the economy through pumping billions of dollars into the stock market. What they've done, first of all, by the way, they've ensured that these billions and billions of dollars have gone into fewer and fewer hands. And the money that they're taking is coming from your and mine's pocket in more than one way. Number one, they're taking it through taxes. Okay, so your money is being given to someone that the government decides deserves it more. And those people are billionaires already. This is the collusion of government and corporations. And they're propping up these stock market bubble. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyway, that is bound to pop. That stock market bubble is bound to pop. It's unsustainable. We cannot last. In addition to our 18-point-something trillion dollar debt that we have now, it's unbelievable to me that we are, this phrase is used a lot, selling our kids into slavery. I don't think that is even I don't even think that goes that far. When you think about it, and let's talk about, in relation to the selling your kids into slavery, let's talk about Social Security, okay? Now, I know this is a contentious issue for many people who are on Social Security. You don't want to hear anything about it being cut because you depend on that money, and I understand. I get it. Believe me, I do. But the money that you gave to the government is gone. The money, this program was originally set up to be essentially a savings plan for you. You would put money into this. You don't have any choice. You can't opt out, by the way. You would be forced to put money into this program and into this account, essentially, is what it was. And everybody's money would go into one fund, and then interest would be accumulated on it, and you would get interest and the money that you paid back from it. So you would be better off with this. How great is that? And you're not stealing money from anybody. You're just getting interest from what you've paid because, hey, money makes money, and that's true. And that all sounds good in theory, but the problem is the people who were the custodians of this money was the government. And you can't trust the government. They stole your money. Plain and simple. The government stole your money. So if you're on Social Security right now, you're getting money that was never yours. All right? I apologize, and I don't mean to I'm not judging anyone. I'm just giving facts here, guys. If you're collecting Social Security right now, you're collecting money that somebody working today has earned and the government has siphoned off to give to you. All right? Now, okay, I'm just telling you what's going on because all that's left in this Social Security fund, this fund that all of the people put their money into, all that's left is a bunch of IOUs. So the only way to fund this program is to continue to take money from people who are currently working and give it to the people on Social Security. So, my question to you is, at what point did we become a society that cared more about our generation than about future generations? I'm just curious because it's clear that we have become that society now. I remember a time, and I hear all the time people say this. If there's a trouble, I've said it myself. If there is a trouble to come, a storm to be weathered, I would rather face it than my children. I would rather be the one that has to suffer and deal with all of the crap that we'll have to face than to force my children to do that. I'll take the burden. That's fine. And I know many of you have that attitude as well. So I understand honoring our commitments. I completely understand that. And even as far as Social Security is concerned, I think that we should abandon the system, honestly. In my personal opinion, I think we should get rid of Social Security, but not for people who are currently on Social Security. People who are already dependent on that system. And I know it sucks. People who have paid into the system, people who have paid into the system all their life and they're about to go on that. I'm sorry, but the government stole from you. The government stole from you. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever for you to steal from someone else in order to pay the commitment that the government made to you. That's not morally right. That is not correct. To steal from someone is wrong. And to allow the government to do that for you is equally wrong. Again, let's talk about this idea. Is it moral for one person to steal from another? Yes. Is it moral for two people to steal from another? Yes. All right. What about 100 people? Is that moral still? I'm sorry. I've completely messed this up here. Let me backtrack here. I think I was using the wrong words. Is it immoral for one person to steal from another? Yes, it is immoral. Is it immoral for two people? Yes, equally immoral. And 100 people, is that still immoral? Yes, it is still immoral. So at what point does it become okay when a collective starts stealing money from people? Is it moral when 51% of the population steal from the other 49%? No, that's not moral. That is immoral. It doesn't matter how many people that there are. It's immoral. Stealing is immoral. So, in terms of Social Security, I think it's important that we honor our agreement, and I don't want to leave anybody high and dry. I understand what it's like living on a fixed income. I get it. You have to go out and get a job otherwise, and you've already worked. You've made your commitment, and I get it. And I'm even okay with us right now, whoever's currently on Social Security, let's pay it out. Let's write out this system here and then be done with it. Let's not put anybody else on Social Security. But there are free market alternatives. There's plenty of other plans that you can do it. I like some of the health or the savings plans that candidates. I think Ted Cruz is one of them that's talked about a retirement plan basically where you own and have access to this plan. You control it. The government can't take any money out of it unless, of course, they do so coercively like they do everything else. And again, we'll see what happens with that. Everything starts out, all of these big government programs, they start out with the best intentions, but the government ends up getting their hooks into something and it turns into something else. My idea for retirement plan is that you figure it out yourself. The government's not going to be the answer, and it's already known that Social Security will become insolvent. And by the way, this is a story that I want to bring up here because this has actually been attacked. Chris Christie said something that may not necessarily be true in the way that he said it. There's a clip that's about ready to play here from this article. I'm going to have to pause it here, and of course, it's taking forever to load. Okay, there we go. All right, so. He said that it will become insolvent in 7 or 8 years. Now, the article I'm reading is money.cnn.com. It's written by, looks like Gian Sahadi or something like that. Anyway, so she's saying that it's not really the case that it's going to be insolvent. Social Security won't be insolvent in 7 or 8 years. Here's the deal. The Social Security trustees estimate that likely starting in 2034, which is 19 years from now, the program will no longer have enough revenue coming in to pay out 100% of its promised benefits to retirees on Social Security. But it will still be able to pay 79% of those promised benefits. So I found it kind of interesting. So I looked up the definition of insolvent because she's saying that it's not going to be insolvent. That's what she's saying. Social Security, not going to be insolvent. But what the word insolvent means, here, let's go ahead and play the word.
Insolvent.
What was that one more time?
Insolvent.
Okay. It means that you're unable to satisfy creditors or discharge liabilities. So, or either because liabilities exceed assets or because the inability to pay debts as they mature. Now, this is the perfect definition of what's going on with Social Security. There are people living longer, all right, and therefore they're receiving more money than they paid in, and that the interest has actually accumulated. So you're getting more money than what you paid into it, and there's more people retiring than it takes to pay for the money that you're getting. And again, they're only going to be able to pay, according to this, in 2034, 79% of those promised benefits. So that means that they're not able to satisfy creditors or discharge their liabilities because they're insolvent. Anyway, so just want to point that out. You know, government's not going to protect you. Government's not going to be able to be your retirement manager. These are individual choices that you have to make for yourself because, let's be clear, the government will screw you every chance that they get. They will screw you. They don't care about you. To the government, you are cattle. They will protect you in as far as much as to protect their investment. They need you to continue funding them. But as far as your actual protection, your livelihood, the quality of your life, they could care less as long as you continue to pay your taxes. They could give a crap. These programs like Social Security, they stole from you. They stole your money. They broke their promises. It is unbelievable that after what we see what happened with Social Security, it is the only thing that you have to point to when you talk about big government. You don't need to know anything else, guys. Gang, I'm telling you now, you don't need to know anything else about Obamacare. You don't need to know anything about Medicare. You don't need to know it. No Social Security. They stole from people who gave them money, coerced into giving them money. They had no choice, and they stole from these people who were counting on that money. And now they want more. They want more. It's unbelievable. Anybody who could believe this is out of their freaking mind. All right, so healthcare. That's another thing. By the way, we're talking about all the troubles that we could face here. You know, we got healthcare, the situation with Iran, Russia. Oh my goodness, what could Putin do? I mean, he's an expansionist trying to take more power. We also have the world currency situation that John Kerry recently illustrated about how we could potentially lose our world currency status. Here's John Kerry.
That is a recipe very quickly, my friends, business people here, for the American dollar to cease to be the reserve currency of the world, which is already bubbling out there.
Okay, so he was referring to, and actually, by the way, before we get to this, I'm realizing we're coming up to the end of the first hour. If you're on the 405 Media, thanks so much for tuning in. And by the way, if you guys haven't checked them out, check out the 405media.com. We simulcast on their program, or on their website. I appreciate them having us. And anyway, if you guys are over there, I really do appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you want to stick with us through the second and third hour, feel free to go to OnTheMoveShow.com or Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Anyway, so back to this world reserve currency thing. Kerry was saying this in regards to the Iran deal, how basically if we were to go back on our commitment to the Iran deal, that we would lose our world reserve currency. That, first of all, doesn't make any sense. But secondly, this is all just a scapegoat of saying that people are already talking about. Again, he said it's already going on. They're already talking about getting rid of the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency. So he's just looking for something to blame on what he knows is coming. And why are people talking about getting rid of the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency? And why does this matter? Why does it matter at all to you? Why should you care about what the world is using to buy and sell goods for? Okay, well, first of all, why the world is going to change? Because of the easy money situation that we have here with our stock market bubble, it's bound to collapse. The world sees the writing on the wall. They know that our debts will come due. We're spending and spending and spending, and as the left would like you to believe, $18 trillion of debt. That's a good thing. It's good because you got to have a little debt out there to make the rest of the world know that, you're able to pay it back. This is the kind of logic. It's like, rotating debt is a good thing. As long as you're able to pay your minimum payment, you're good to go. That's good. The creditors love you. Your credit score goes up. Doesn't matter if you're maxing out every credit card you own. As far as they're concerned, it doesn't matter. But I digress. The world understands this, and the world knows that they've been lied to. We were told we're going to stay on the gold, or we told them we're going to stay on the gold standard, that we're not going to print any money, and we lied. We are printing money, we're digitizing money, we're adding zeros to bank accounts. It's the same thing as printing dollar bills. All right, there's no difference. And we lied. First of all, we didn't. Again, it's another situation of us not honoring our commitments. Our government is immoral. It is corrupt. Our government makes us liars, all right? It makes people who are receiving Social Security, you are now involved in stealing from the young. I'm sorry, but that's what the government has forced your hand to do, because they made you promises and they lied to you and stole your money, and now they're having you steal someone else's money to get what you were promised. That's just fact. So, world reserve currency, why would this matter? Why would this matter? Well, if everything is in U.S. dollars, then everybody else has to convert to our currency, which means that they have to buy goods sell goods to America, compete with us in the world market, and deal with us in trade and things like that to get our dollars. They have to get our dollars somehow, so they have to sell us things, and we pay for it in U.S. dollars, and we don't have to convert it to their currency, which means that we don't have to buy things from them first to do it. So it's an advantageous situation. In addition, the U.S. dollar is what's used to buy oil currently. We'll see if that sticks around, guys, because I don't expect it. But anyway, so if what will happen? Why should you care? Why does any of this matter? Because everything will increase in price if we have to pay for it in someone else's dollar. Some other currency, everything, the prices for everything will skyrocket. So that's why you should care. And especially something that comes from overseas, it's going to be an arm and a freaking leg. You talk about oil prices now, which, by the way, if we're talking about the what's going on with our oil prices, I mentioned this before, OPEC, they're trying to kill our fracking industry. They realize, the Saudis realize that this is a huge threat to their national sovereignty, because we're able to produce more natural gas than they have oil. So they really don't like that. They are afraid of us. They sent out an internal memo talking about how big of a threat we are with our fracking industry. So they're trying to put it out of business, and that's why they've pumped. Again, something the left likes to say is that supply and demand doesn't matter. It's not a real thing when it comes to oil. It's all about speculation. Has nothing to do with the supply. It's just these evil oil speculators. It's a lie. It's incorrect. All you have to do is see what OPEC is doing. They're pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping and flooding the market with oil in an effort to lower the price of oil low enough to make fracking not an option. It's too expensive. It's too expensive to frack when oil is as low as it is. So that's why your price of gas at the pump is doing so great. And I'm sure Obama's probably taking full credit for this. Oh, I've lowered the price of gas. It's amazing. I'm the best president there's ever been. Look, I'm telling you right now, guys, it has absolutely nothing to do with Obama. Absolutely nothing. In fact, it's in spite of Obama that it's happening. And anyway, it's places like Texas, places like North Dakota that have been getting around and skirting, getting past the government intervention, getting around all of the problems that the government has created for them. First of all, North Dakota and Texas have single-handedly saved the United States economy during this recession. Single-handedly. They are responsible for us not being in a depression. Single-handedly. Now, all of this is in spite of Obama, and yet he's going to take full credit for the lower gas prices, which only came about because of fracking, which he doesn't like, and which he's done everything it seems like he could do to stop it through the environmental movement. So, again, there is no connection on the left between reality and politics. There's absolutely no connection. They just say whatever they want. They take credit for things that they had no hand in. What's some other issues that we could have? Okay, we got the further rise of socialism in America. This is coming around the corner. And again, all of these problems are something that I'm talking about. These are problems that the next president will have to face. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if he's a Democrat, a Republican, or even a Libertarian. It doesn't matter. They'll all have to face these. The storm clouds are gathering, gang, and things are going to get bad. Now, this is the important point to note here, okay? The President of the United States will play a role in this. And what role is important? Because if we move further towards socialism, if we get a Democrat, let's say, and the only option here is Hillary, there's not going to be a Bernie Sanders. Bernie's getting real big on the college crowd, but look, Bernie has no intention of playing his hand all the way through this. He has and you could see that when he gave Hillary a pass in this Democrat debate where he said, "We're sick and damn tired of hearing about your emails." Look, if he really cared, if he really wanted to actually fight Hillary for this seat, he would have pressed her on that issue. It was a golden opportunity to do so, but she got a pass from her biggest competition, and we can see that Hillary is the clear choice for the Democrat nomination. It's going to be Hillary. I don't know who her VP is. We'll see. But anyway, with us leading down the road of socialism, if we get a Hillary, we're going to be going more into these problems. We're going to see the ultimate end. But if we get let's say a Ted Cruz, this is the guy that I currently like. I'm not married to this choice, but I'm using him as an example, or even a Ben Carson. I like Ben Carson too. But if we get a guy who is trying to stick to free market principles, and actually face problems head on, rather than deny that there's even a problem to begin with, or try to create a situation where they kick the can down the road and have the next generation face that problem. All right. If we end up with a president that is actually going to face this issues, this storm, face the storm that is coming, because gang, I'm telling you, it's going to be bad. All right. And I know I sound like I'm a crazy man. I know I sound crazy up here. I'm sitting here saying, things are about to be bad. Things are going to be bad. I'm telling you, the bubble's going to pop. Bubbles pop. That's what they do. And they don't pop easy either, guys. It's not like, slowly the stock market's going to just fix itself. When the government stops being able to, number one, is going to be one of two things with the stock market. When the government is either, when they choose to stop artificially stimulating the market bubble, it'll pop then, and it'll pop hard, and it'll be bad. Or the government won't be able to financially pump any more money into it, and it'll pop then. Whenever the government stops is when it pops. That's it. I mean, it's completely propped up by the government. So, again, we've seen where the government actually manipulates the market when they see that things are crashing. They have actually taken the stock market down and said, there was some kind of glitch. Right. It's a glitch. Sure. We believe that, right? All of us believe that. But I think this is the role, if we have, this is why the next election is important, because we're either going to march further into the abyss, closer to the abyss, or we're going to stop and face our problems now. If we elect a good, conservative constitutionalist, somebody along those lines, somebody who believes in free market and wants to keep the government small, maybe we'll have a chance of weathering this storm, because I'm telling you, the storm is coming. The storm clouds are gathering. It's going to be bad. The longer we put this off, the more clouds that gather. The left is going to have us just wait and wait and wait until we can't hold it off anymore, and it all hits at once. Hopefully we'll get a president on the right that wants to actually face the storm that's coming and prepare us to weather the storm. I think that if we get a Ted Cruz in office, a Ben Carson in office, we'll be more inclined to weather it as a nation. Now, I think that no matter what happens in this election, the poo is going to hit the oscillating fan. It's going to happen. And everybody's going to get messy. Every single one of us. It's only a matter of time. And, you know, I'm not really interested in political solutions anymore, because I just don't think that there are any. I honestly, I don't think that there's any amount of lobbying that we can do to change this government. I don't think that there's any way that we can get back to first principles. I don't think that we can do anything within this current system. And I'm not calling for an armed revolution or an overthrow of this government. I don't think that would work. I think lives would be lost, and I'm not for that. I don't think that we're at the point where we have to fight. We have to choose between, you know, our life or tyranny, you know, or our life and death. If the government hasn't forced us to make that decision yet, we're still living in a state of soft tyranny where you can still go get your, you know, grande latte and go to the movies, and you think that you're relatively free to make your own decisions, but most of your political decisions are not really decisions at all. They're limited, and the government's already made them for you. You're just choosing the options that they gave you. So I don't think that we have a political solution. I don't think that we're going to fix this. And this is one thing, you know, I had somebody on Facebook say, you know, you sound like you're losing faith. You're getting depressed, or I don't know. I guess they felt a lot of negativity in what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I'm positive that bad things are going to happen. I mean, that's just clear. You know, the economy is going to tank. Something else, a terrorist attack, World War III, the increase in the police state. Again, I've mentioned before, if we turn dark, it's going to be bad. All right, we got more tech, more government than the Nazis ever had, more ability to influence your life, more control techniques than ever before in history. If we turn dark, it's going to be really bad. You know, but what I'm positive about, what I feel like that it is positive, is that no matter what happens, the Leviathan will die. It will shrivel up and die. Now, it may be a few years from now, or we may continue a slow march towards socialism and the abyss. And the fact of the matter is, even if the socialists and communists and all these people win, all right, even if they somehow take power and we become a socialist nation, it's not going to be a utopia. All right, it's not going to be the utopia that they claim it will be. We're not going to be better off. We're all going to be worse. And the money that they say, how they're so upset that all this money is going into so few hands, well, it's going to continue to happen. And you're going to see a demise of the middle class, and you're going to see a lot of people really pissed off because they were all drunk on the hope and change that they were promised by President Obama. And all they're going to see is more of the same, more crony corporatism. They're going to see more people profiting from the efforts of others. They're going to get sick of it. And eventually, if you're an Ayn Rand reader, you're going to know what I'm talking about. They're going to shrug these people off of their backs. Eventually, it will happen. And they're going to finally say, enough is enough. I'm not your slave. I own myself and my spoils. So I'm positive that will happen one day. Either the collapse will happen and it'll just be a reset, and everybody who is living on someone else, everyone that was on the teat of the government, will either go away or have to figure out a way to make it on their own. They'll have to take personal responsibility for themselves and stand up and actually do something for themselves. Take responsibility for themselves and not rely on others. So they'll either do that or they'll go away. I mean, those are the only options. If somebody's not providing for you, the economy collapses, the government is in shambles, nobody's giving money to the government, I mean, this system cannot last. It cannot last. So, I'm positive that one day, things are going to be different. Everything's going to change. I am positive. It's only a matter of time until people shrug off the weight that they're carrying on their shoulders. There's so many people in the cart. There's not enough people pulling it. And one day, people are just going to sit the cart down and walk away. I mean, it's a matter of time. So, other big issues, other things that could happen. We got jobs in the economy, big government and big business colluding. Again, we were talking about that. One of the things that it's interesting that no one ever seems to really talk about, especially, with the socialism and, the furthering of this federal Leviathan, the making it bigger and increasing the tax code. This is something that nobody, except for, let's see, what's her name? Carly Fiorina. She's been talking about this recently. And, she makes some really good points. The fact that we have like a 73,000 page tax code, is that simpler for or is that better for a small business, or is it better for a big business? A 73,000 page tax code. Is it better for the super wealthy, or is it better for the middle class? I think it's pretty obvious that having a 73,000 page tax code is better for people with money to be able to navigate and find the loopholes, and also be able to create the loopholes, stimulate the loopholes, as Donald Trump would do. You give money to these politicians and they'll do whatever the hell you want. So if you pay off a politician to create a loophole for you in the 73,000 page tax code, who's going to know? Nobody's read the damn thing. Who's going to know? Have you read the tax code? No, you haven't. Have you ever hired somebody from like H&R Block to do that? Well, yeah, you probably have. I know I have. I've hired people to do my taxes for me because I don't understand what the heck's going on. I don't. It's very, very complicated, and it's a progressive. Oddly enough, they call it progressive tax code. It should be called a regressive tax code, because really what they're doing is stifling any kind of development, making it easier for the big businesses to stomp out their competition, making it harder on the little guy, easier on the big guy, and creating monopolies. Again, it's the collusion between big government and big business, which it's frustrating to me. The tax code, it should be so simple. It really is unbelievable to me that. And I've read this in my college book I was talking about last week. I paid $178 for this freaking book. Anyway, one of the things in it was talking about reverse racism, how, anytime a white person is discriminated against, unrelated to what we're talking about here, but anytime a white person is discriminated against, they're calling it reverse racism, as if the white person was racist first. Something I have a fundamental problem with. I hate that word, the concept of reverse racism. Like, I'm guilty already, and now you're just inflicting it on me back. Okay. But I digress. Anyway, they were talking about progressive and regressive tax codes, and they actually called like a flat tax regressive, because it was harder on the middle class because they're paying the same percentage as the super wealthy or elite or these corporations. Everybody pays the same. It's not true. It's just not true. Well, they are doing some kind of Common Core math here, guys. It's simple. It's simple as heck. What is 10% of a million? And what's 10% of 1,000? I think the million 10% is a little higher. It's not the same. And I'm just using 10% here because it's easy for you to work out. But the point is, even if we were paying 20% or 15% of taxes, flat tax, everybody pays the same percentage, not the same amount, because again, 20% of $1 million is more than 20% of $1,000, guys. It's just more. It's math. Look it up. Do your math, all right? Whip out your calculators and figure it out yourself. People talk about fair share. It's the only way to ensure that there is a fair share. You talk about a progressive tax code with these different brackets and all 73,000 pages of loopholes carved out for companies to make sure that they don't pay any taxes. GE, by the way, a few years ago, they didn't pay hardly any money in taxes, yet they made it's like a record in profits. All right, it's unbelievable that the middle class is being targeted by progressive loophole tax codes, and it's considered progressive and not regressive, and they're classifying flat taxes as regressive because they say it's damaging to the middle class. I would highly disagree. And again, this goes back to the whole idea we were talking about last week of indoctrination in our educational system, which is another threat we face. By the way, some of the troubled times coming to a head. First of all, just education in general. Last week we talked about student loans and how that bubble will pop. There's actually a student loan bubble that people just can't afford to pay back these loans that they took out. Again, easy lending, and it's all been taken up by Obamacare. Obamacare sucked all that debt up, and let's see here. And we were talking about indoctrination. So we talked earlier about last week about these indoctrination centers known as public education systems or government-run schools. And I want to bring up a link I got from a friend of the show. His name is Aaron. And I don't know if this is real. I don't know the source on this, but this is crazy. This is from a Free Talk Live. They actually posted a picture of some homework, it looks like, that the kids are doing. I don't know if this is Common Core stuff, but let me read here. They're talking about possessive nouns. They want you to make the sentence less wordy by, changing words around that are underlined to make it less wordy. Anyway, the first one is the job of the president is not easy. All right, that's the first one. And then you're supposed to reword it, and the person wrote, the president's job is not easy. So let me go through all of these and read to you what they're indoctrinating children to read right now, okay? The job of the president is not easy. The people of a nation do not always agree. The choices of the president affect everyone. He makes sure the laws of the country are fair. The commands of government officials must be obeyed by all. The wants of an individual are less important than the well-being of the nation. Gang, I don't know if this is real. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this is sourced. I don't know where this comes from. But seriously, the commands of the government must be obeyed by all. This is important to really point out. When you teach children to believe a certain set of values, and this one is worship to the state. This is what our kids are being taught, to worship the state. They worship at the altar of the government as if it is a deity, as if it is a god. So why should we be surprised when 20 years from now, these people, they graduate, they're running the world. These are the people that are going to be making the decisions for everyone in our government. Why should we be surprised that we're becoming more and more socialist? I don't think it should come as a shock to anyone when this is what our kids are being taught. And in colleges, it's equally bad. I can tell you, it's equally bad. There's no other perspective. It's not like you're getting both sides of the coin. I never hear any libertarian viewpoints coming out of anyone's mouth in college or in books that I read unless I'm the one saying it or writing it. I never hear it. Now, granted, there may be other students that aren't saying anything. They want to stay below the radar. They're afraid that if they speak up, maybe they'll lose the debate. Maybe they'll look stupid. They don't want to look stupid, and I get it. Look, I've seen my face. I'm not afraid of looking stupid. All right. So the point of this is that you have to have a diversity of thought. That is one of the things that was supposed to be really important when it comes to school, is diversity of thought, hearing everybody's different points of view, trying to hear them out. Let me see. Am I wrong? Do I agree with you? What are your points? Yeah, you make some good ones, or no, you don't. But instead, what we're doing is we're teaching our kids to only think one way. We take out all the other ways that you could potentially think and just think that the state is God. Obey everything they say. They cannot be wrong. They will never lie to you. They'll never steal from you. They are your God, and they are an almighty, omnipresent deity. That is what our kids are being taught. And it's just not true. Again, governments are an immoral force. Everything the government has, they stole. They lie to you continually. They want more power. That's all they want is power and control. To them, you are cattle, and you're only worth the revenue you produce. And they only care about that. That's all they don't even have a duty to protect you. The Supreme Court has said that the government has no responsibility to protect you. So why would you give them the job of doing that when they have no responsibility? I'm just saying, let me ask you this question, okay? If you were to hire somebody to do a job, all right? And let's say that job was to watch your kids, all right? They were a babysitter. And you were giving them that job, and they weren't going to be held accountable for anything that happened to your kids. Would you trust them if that was the agreement that they made you sign prior to entering into this deal where they're watching your kids, okay? It's a daycare center or something, that we're not going to take any liability for anything at all that happens to your kid. None. Would you be okay with that? Now, there may be daycare centers that are doing that kind of thing, that maybe have a no liability policy or something. I sure as hell wouldn't take my kids there. I'll tell you that. If you're not going to take responsibility for the job that you're doing, you shouldn't be doing the damn job. It's simple. It is simple. And whose job is it to protect people? It's their own. It's your job to protect yourself, okay? And yeah, you can protect others around you too. That's good. And communities can collectively come together to protect each other. But when the government starts coming together, again, all government is a collective of people coming together to organize. And it gets hijacked, and that's what it's done. It's become its own entity. No longer does it represent the collective will of people asserting their individual rights. Instead, it is a collective leviathan. It's the tyranny of the majority. Anyway, let's see. Let's finish up this topic. I don't want to spend too much more time. It's been an hour and a half already talking about problems that we could face here. You know, we got the felonization of everything. Every single damn thing is going to be against the law, and you're going to lose your rights. You know, for every single thing there is out there that's a crime, it's become more and more felonies. Let me ask you, what is a felony? What should a felony be? Somebody who, in my opinion, if you commit a felony, it should be somebody who hurt others. All right? Somebody who violated someone else's rights. Those kind of things, those should be felonies. But victimless crimes are felonies now, guys. Victimless crimes, and there's plenty of them, and they are increasing what it is to be a felon further and further. Again, creating a disproportionate group of people, class of people who are felons. You can be legally discriminated against if you're a felon, and they're widening what it means to be a felon. Eventually, one day, all of us will be a felon. We'll not have the right to vote, not a right to have guns. We'll all be felons, and. Again, we got the racial tension that's continuing to build and be stoked by the left, by the race baiters, and obviously the giant issue of immigration. You know, that we talk about how immigrants, low-skilled immigrants, do not create jobs. I've said this several times. You cannot, as an illegal immigrant, all right, an illegal immigrant with low skills. Now, I'm not saying that immigrants can't create jobs. That's not what I'm saying. Or even low-skilled immigrants. They can still create jobs. But illegal low-skilled immigrants cannot create jobs. All they can do is take jobs under the table from people who are also low-skilled but American citizens. Who should those jobs go to? Americans. I believe that it is a complete lie when people say, oh, they're doing the jobs that Americans won't do. Well, they're doing those jobs because they're getting paid under the table. They're actually making more money doing that job under the table than what that company would be willing to offer an American citizen, because that American citizen, even if it, let's say it was for, $8 an hour. They're paying the legal $8 an hour, all right? Which is probably a little bit too much for what they would probably do, but let's just say $8 an hour. That $8 an hour is $8 an hour to an illegal. That goes straight into their pocket. They don't have to pay Uncle Sam anything. And the legal person who's getting paid $8 an hour, they're losing out on a big portion of that for Medicaid, Social Security, and the government's cut everything. Again, the government's reaching into the pockets. So if there wasn't this big pool of unskilled laborers there who were illegal and they could pay under the table like this because they knew they could treat them crappy, not give them health benefits, all these other things that the left said that we're supposed to have. You have to have this. The government can force an employer to make them have a minimum pay, a minimum wage, a minimum benefit. All of these things you have to provide. Every single one of these things. But again, it doesn't apply to illegals because illegals are here legally and they don't have the same rights according to employers because they're already breaking the law by having these people work for them. They're not going to provide health care or all this other stuff because you're already here illegally. And what are you going to do? Complain about it? Well, I'll get you deported. I'll tell somebody you're here illegally. What are you going to do? You're going to complain? Well, I'll just make your life a living hell. I'll get you deported. That's the danger of having these illegal immigrants here, and obviously they are taking American jobs. They're taking jobs away from Americans who would do them, but they are being underbid. And immigrants can afford to underbid them because they don't come with all these governmental attachments that we do, we American citizens do. Now, if there were no illegals here doing those unskilled labor positions, these companies would also be forced to have to hire people here in America to do those jobs. And they would only be able to hire people here in America when they raise their wage to a level that Americans would do it. So it's not the job that Americans won't do. It's the fact that, the government is between you and the job, and it makes it harder for you to get that job than it is for the illegal. The illegal can outbid you because they are not subjected to having the government between them because they're already here illegally. They don't follow the laws. They're not going to follow any of the other laws either. So, anywho, the immigration crisis that's going on in Europe right now, we could see a similar crisis here in the United States, no doubt. And in addition to that, we could see the left, the Democrats try to do amnesty in a move to basically buy the votes of a whole new voting group in America. And if that happens, goodbye. Goodbye, two-party system. Hello, one-party oligarchy. It's not coming back. It's not coming back from that until everybody shrugs off their shoulders. Okay, so let's see. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking through my show notes here. I've gone way off the rails, guys. I'm like way out in the weeds. All right, so again, this election does matter because it depends on how far we're going to go. Are we going to face the storm? Are we going to actually do something now about the debt that we have, or are we going to continue to march closer and closer to the abyss and eventually fall right in? So the President of the United States does matter, but only so far as that. How bad it's going to be, how bad the storm will be. The storm's coming, gang. It's coming. And I know I must sound like, one of those crazy guys with a big old sign on my body, ringing the bell, bring out your dead, bring out your dead. If anybody has watched the movie The Stand by Stephen King, I think it's a miniseries. If anybody's seen that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I probably sound like one of those guys, and that's fine. I don't really care. I think it's important that you guys know what's around the corner. This would be the time where if I had a sponsor that I could say, hey, you should buy, emergency food supplies, things along those lines, gold, those kind of things. I would direct you to one of those, but I don't have any sponsors. So I will just say that you should look into emergency preparedness, and I mean that seriously. I know it's kind of out there to some people. Some people don't think that it's really something that they should even be considering, that it's so crazy that the world could never stop. But let me just point out, guys, that grocery stores, for example, all right? Grocery stores only carry roughly about 3 days worth of normal sales of products in their store. So all we have to do is look at situations like Hurricane Katrina. All right, Hurricane Katrina, the grocery stores were cleaned out by looters within hours. Everything on the shelves was gone. The shelves were bare. No help was coming either. This is the thing. If we get into a situation where the trucks stop running, all right, nationally, because this problem is not going to be isolated to just one state. It's not. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry to tell you, but this is going to be a not just even a national problem. This is going to be in the United States, but being that all of our markets are so linked together, the globalization of the monetary system, everything's going to be affected. Our whole country, the entire world, will be affected. There will be no help coming but the help that you provide for yourself. So, do you have food? Do you have a way to produce clean water? Do you have ammunition? Because that's going to be worth more than gold. Ammunition is the jack of all trades. You can hunt with it. You can defend yourself with it. You can trade it with it. It's going to be so important. Are you ready? What are you doing? I know back with our older generation, all right? The ones who, and again, I think the best generation, the people who fought, for example, World War II, I think is the greatest generation ever lived, and I'm not alone in that. And I also, I want to point out, again, I know I kind of attacked Social Security, and I don't mean to attack the recipients of Social Security. You guys, many of you are very, very liberty-minded. Many of you vote Republican, which is exactly why Republicans won't go after Social Security, by the way. So we're not enemies. And in fact, I have a lot of admiration and respect for the older generation. I think there's a lot of wisdom that they have, and I wish to learn from. I hope one day to get that wisdom. But there's a fundamental difference between the way we were and the way we are. Now it's ridiculous to prepare, but the older generation, they prepared. Our older generation, they had food storage. They used to can. And by the way, during World War II, the president, he asked, and I've mentioned this before, he asked the country to ease the demand at the grocery stores and plant their own victory gardens. Grow your own food, he asked the people. Can you imagine if the President of the United States asked, if Barack Obama was like, hey, everybody, I need your help. Can you please grow some of your own food? Huh? Would you do that for me? Can you imagine what the reaction of people would be? Nobody would take that seriously, especially on the left. Nobody would take that seriously. Maybe there would be some people who would take that advice, and I'm telling you right now, if you have the ability to grow your own food, this is a great way that you can kind of help hedge your bets here for what is coming. Even if you don't start growing it now, have the seeds ready and available. You may need them. There's a lot of seed companies online that you can get big old seed containers with like hundreds of different kinds of fruits and vegetable seeds in them. Look it up. Again, I don't have sponsors. If any of you out there would like to sponsor the show, if you have a product like that, I'd be happy to talk about it. I'd check out your product and see if it's something I'd recommend to our audience. But look it up for yourself and find out if it's right for you. Find out what is right for you. Find out what you could do. But you need to be taking steps, guys. I mean, again, you don't have to get crazy with it and prepare for the sun to blow up. Granted, it could happen. I mean, it will happen one day. But, it's something as small as having a little bit of food put away. We used to value these kind of things. There were fables that are just not being taught anymore that used to be taught. I remember growing up and being taught the story about the squirrel and... I can't remember the other. I think it was a cricket or something. I don't remember. Anyway, it was a squirrel and another animal. And I think I'll just say cricket. The cricket was lazy, and he was just watching the squirrel all summer long. Start hoarding his nuts and preparing for the coming winter. And then when the winter came, the cricket died, and the squirrel had food left. I'm telling you guys, we're coming to a point here when this whole house of cards is going to come falling down. It's only a matter of time. And yeah, they can maybe delay the inevitable, but they cannot stop it. They cannot prevent it. The only way that we'll be able to make it through as a nation is if we take steps now to protect ourselves, to become responsible for ourselves as individuals, and not relying on the government, to take measures to protect ourselves and our family. Anyone that tells you that it's too big to fail is lying to you, or they're just simply ignorant. Anybody that tells you that it'll never happen, they don't know what they're talking about. And granted, I'm not an expert on anything, but I can listen to experts which are saying these things. You know, I can understand when you break down the subjects to the easiest, most simple points. It makes sense. It's so easy. It's not rocket science. But what the elites would like to do is make it overly complicated to confuse you and make you think that you can't deal with it. You're too stupid to deal with this stuff. You're too simple-minded. Let the highly educated people deal with it. Let the politicians come up with their political solutions. It's too complicated for your simple, stupid mind to understand and wrap your head around. It's just too complicated of a problem. When really it all boils down to first principles. It all boils down to individual responsibility and lessons that we learned as children. I mean, things are so simple when you boil it down to that. Look, I mean, we all learned growing up that killing is wrong. Yet we allow the government to enforce laws that ultimately lead to killing people who were not hurting other people. They weren't creating victims. You know, they weren't like infringing on somebody's rights. We were taught as kids that, you know, stealing is wrong. Yet we allow our government to do it in our name. It's wrong. It's immoral. Just because, you know, that the government's doing it doesn't mean that it's any less immoral. You know, we've lost our way. We have lost our way. We've gone away from these principles that we know to be correct. But suddenly we've allowed politicians to make us think that we're too stupid and too incapable, and we've allowed them to actually let us believe that we don't have the power to do anything. We don't have the power to plan for our own retirement. We don't have the power to decide what kind of work that we'll accept, what kind of wage we'll accept. We don't have the power to decide if a health care is expensive or not, and to look around and shop around and find cheaper health care. We don't have the right to look across the state border to shop around for better health care. You know, we're too stupid to figure out the 73,000 pages of tax code that are detrimental to the middle class. I don't even like saying class because that's very Marxist, but you know, there are clearly people who are mid-range incomes, low-range incomes, and people that are super, super high up there. And the people that are super high up there, some of them got their own merit, and some of them did not. Some of them are making money off of your back. Some of them have worked with the government, colluded with the government again to make monopolies, to make it impossible for competition to spring up and really compete with them. You know, the government thinks that you're too stupid and too irresponsible to carry a gun to defend yourself, yet they have no responsibility to protect you. And you know, again, by the way, I was told earlier today that from some comment on YouTube that I'm afraid all of my positions on guns and the Second Amendment, it all comes down to fear of the government, fear of criminals, fear of all of these things. Fear. It's all fear. And that is probably the most laughable thing that I've ever heard a leftist say to me, because liberals are and again, I'm having trouble not saying the word liberal. Let's call it statists. Statists are more fearful than anyone I've ever met in my life. Statists are afraid that a gun is an inanimate object is going to jump off of a table and shoot people. Statists are afraid that I can't control my emotions, therefore I need to be disarmed. Statists are afraid of everything, and they choose the government as a lesser of two evils to solve their problems, and then eventually get so caught up in the fear of everything else in the world that they begin to worship the deity that they've created called the state. Statists are the ones that are feared, that are in fear. I'm not afraid of anything. I mean, as far as this, I mean, I have fears. Let's be real. You know, like handlebar mustaches. I don't. It's not that I'm afraid of handlebar mustaches, guys. It's just I don't trust anybody with them. All right. I'm sorry. If you have a handlebar mustache out there, like the one that's off your face that you can twist, I just don't trust it. All right. Every single time I've seen a villain in cartoons growing up, they had a handlebar mustache. So far, I've lived by that philosophy my entire life, and so far it's served me well. So, but again, I'm not afraid of criminals. I got guns. All right, I distrust criminals and I distrust governments. All right, I'm not afraid of them. I distrust anybody that wants to remove the rights of somebody, of individuals, in order to protect them. I distrust that, and especially when they include the fact that they're not responsible for you. I distrust the idea of creating an all-powerful Leviathan, and that no bad person, no evil person is going to try to take advantage of that. No one is going to take advantage of the system that you've created. Everybody in our government is a bunch of angels. Well, if that's the case, then you're right. We don't need the Second Amendment. We don't need the Bill of Rights at all. We don't need free speech. We don't need any of this because our government is angels. They'll take care of us. No, they won't. They are human beings. And many of them seek power, which is why they're in political office to begin with, which is why I say that most of the people who want this political power probably shouldn't get it. Which is one of the reasons why I actually like Ben Carson, because he doesn't really want the power. He didn't really think of himself as a presidential candidate until his own words in this last debate. Until he heard hundreds of thousands of people telling them that he should run. I think that's an admirable quality. Look at the history behind it. We have a history here in America of the reluctant politician, most of them fake, and probably all of them fake, because again, people want power. But George Washington, he gave up his power. It's kind of hard to say that he's a reluctant or that he's not actually a reluctant politician when he won the Revolutionary War, and he could have been the monarch. He could have been the king of America, but he chose not to. He chose to give up his power and go back to being a farmer. Those are the kind of politicians I want. People who don't want the power. People who are afraid of the power. People who mistrust the power. And I'm not fearful. I have no fear. You've heard me talk about all the doom and gloom of things that could happen. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not down emotionally. I have gone through the stages of grief, everyone. I understand where we're at now, okay? I accept the situation that we're facing. And I'm no longer going to stick my head in the sand and pretend that there's some kind of political solution. The only solution is that we face the storm. We face it now. It's going to hurt. It's not going to be a popular thing. People aren't going to like it. But I'd rather face the storm today than kick the can down the road and have my children face it. Have my children, and eventually, imagine the debt, just the debt situation. We got $18 trillion of debt. As we continue to accumulate this, how long until the people who are paying this debt, first of all, can't afford it anymore because the interest rates are too high. We can't even afford to pay the interest on the loan. When would that day come? Very soon. But let's say it doesn't. Let's say we continue to kick the can down the road. Eventually, the people paying this debt are going to be our kids. And aren't they going to be pissed at us for the bill that we left them? And what if they just decide that, hey, we're not going to pay this bill anymore? I mean, these days could come. I'm just saying, we have to face the music. The debts will be collected one day, and I'd rather than be faced with this today and have to deal with the heartache today, now, before it's worse. The longer we wait, the worse it's going to be. And I'd rather be the ones that face it than force our children into slavery and servitude of paying our debts for us. Anyway, we've been going for a long time. We haven't had a break in a really long time. We're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to actually go into the next featured topic, which are the 2 responsibilities that the federal government ought to have. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, gang. All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us to the break. If you would like to join today's conversation, you can do so in a variety of ways. You can give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow or get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. Happy to read your tweets live on the air. Okay, so 2 responsibilities of the federal government. So let's first, again, keep in mind that the government is really an immoral force, all right? So limiting government should be our first responsibility. We should have as little of it as possible. Look at government. First of all, governments are parasitical in nature. They exist solely on the spoils of others. So you would like to limit this parasitical being, this parasitical entity. It's like a cancer. All right, you would like to have as little as possible. And granted, in this example, even I'm a minarchist. Let me just put this out here. I'm a minarchist. I believe that some government is necessary. I would like it if there would be zero government. It would be great. I would love to live in that utopia of zero government. However, there are some issues that arise where disputes between people may happen, and those disputes need to be settled. So I like court systems, things along those lines, where we can settle our dispute and try to make the victim whole again, which is one of the reasons why I dislike our current penal system, our current prison system, because they completely ignore the victim. The victim, for example, somebody stole a car from you, all right, and the car's gone, it's hit some chop shop, and now its parts are spread all over the United States. All right. What happens if the criminal's caught? Do you get a check in the mail from the criminal? No. What happens is that criminal will go to jail for 5-10 years, something like that, okay? And then you're penalized again because your tax money is having to pay for their food, their medical costs, they're securing them in this facility, and it's not a rehabilitation center. I mean, how could it ever be considered rehabilitation to lock somebody up into a prison where they're housed with hardened criminals for years and years and years, and now it's basically a school for criminals. That guy's not going to come out there a reformed human being unless he chooses to, and it's not going to be because of the system made you do it, So let's be real about that. But secondly, it's punishing again. It's monetarily hurting the person again to lock this person up. So and then they're not getting made whole. That's kind of the whole point of this system that it should be anyway, I think, is to make that person whole again. They're still out of a car, and now they're out of more tax money, so they're kind of screwed. And that's why I don't really agree with the system. But anyway, back to the two responsibilities of the government. Me being a minarchist, I believe that there are some necessary applications for the government. I think that we function well, and as long as we keep the government to only these responsibilities, it's not a threat. And I think it's okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm happy to hear from you. I'm sure we have a lot of people who would disagree with me on different areas, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, 360-450-5625. But I think the first responsibility of the federal government, and arguably the most important, is managing foreign relations. And that's through both defense and treaties. Okay, so obviously, providing for the common defense. That's even in the Constitution, everybody. A military. And organizing the military through a civilian military leader, i.e. the President of the United States. He's our commander-in-chief. I don't like the idea of the military being able to run themselves and have control without having civilian influence, civilian governmental influence. So that's where the civilian military leader comes into play. I don't think that we should have a standing army. I don't think we should have a federal government army. I think all the ground troops should be in state militias, and the state militias should be the ones that they're funding and organizing their own military to protect the people of their state. And the President of the United States could mobilize the state militias and for the common defense, and I think that's a good idea. I know that the Constitution doesn't provide for a standing army for more than 2 years. It can only fund a standing army for more than 2 years, but they do say that state militias are a right. So anyway, and the Constitution provides for a Navy. You can have a Navy nonstop. The Congress can fund that. I think that also an Air Force is necessary as well if we're going to be talking about national defense, because it's important to note that we have aircraft all up and down our coasts that respond to any kind of jets or planes or things like that are coming in to our territory. And some of those recently have been Russia. They're challenging our airspace and continuing to basically do little games to check our responses. And again, they're testing us. Russia is testing us right now. They're testing our security, and they're testing to see what our responses are, how many people come when they go across this border, what is their response time, and they're keeping track of all this. They are probing our borders. So I don't think that the fact that Russia has been like target locking on NATO planes and doing the same thing that they're doing to us, they're doing it in Turkey. I mean, they're testing the people that they one day want to fight with. All right, this is ultimately what it comes down to, and. Anyway, I think as far as the two responsibilities of the federal government, managing these foreign relations through defense, like I said, and treaties. So I like the idea, though. I know we have a civilian military leader, a commander-in-chief, the President of the United States. I like the idea of a state veto option, like if the states don't want to commit their troops to some issue or to some conflict or something. I think the states should be able to opt out. I think that should be an option. Now I don't know how that would go about. I think that would be a good way to do it. And again, it would prevent the military from being used in a way that is not for the common defense. If you start looking at if our homeland is being attacked, why wouldn't everybody support defending it? Everybody would support defending that. If you just look at the votes on the Patriot Act, 99% of the people voted yes on it, and 1 abstained from voting, if I'm remembering correctly. So, seriously, the Patriot Act passed amazingly quick. If there was a true threat to the homeland, everybody would be for it. We don't need one person being able to make unilateral action. So I like the option of having different levels of checks and balances on the war declaration power. I don't like the fact that we are entering into these conflicts with basically just one man deciding that we're going to send troops and into conflicts, and it's not going through Congress at all, no congressional approval, and more importantly, the states don't have a veto option. The states can't choose that, hey, we're not going to send our guys. If you guys want to go over there, that's fine. That's on you. But we're not going to send our people. But I digress. Anyway, and then the treaty powers, creating allies. I think that's a good role of the federal government, creating allies with other nations and, trade agreements, things along those lines. I don't have any problem with the government doing that as long as they're not infringing upon the states. And I think that as far as a role for treaties regarding economic stuff that affects the states, I think that the states should have the ability to veto that, again, as another check and balance. But I think these are two very clear, important roles that should be done by the federal government. And this all falls underneath the one role of managing foreign relations. So the second role that the federal government has and should do, in my personal opinion, is the ability to settle interstate disputes. And let me give you an example here. For example, let's say Indiana is polluting. It has a factory right on the border, and it's pumping a bunch of toxic gas or something across the border, and it's going into, let's say, Kentucky. I live in Kentucky, and they border there. So it's pumping a bunch of toxic gas into the air, and it's hurting people in Kentucky. Well, people in Kentucky don't have any influence over the government in Indiana, so that right there is a dispute. How do people in Kentucky control what's going on in Indiana? Well, that I think is where the government can play. The federal government can come in and play a role in this. I think that they can make a decision and try to settle the dispute in court through federal courts, Supreme Court or other federal courts. And if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court rules on it, then I think that the Supreme Court should not be, first of all, the ultimate arbiter of all things constitutional. I think that is a huge mistake to give the Supreme Court 9 judges, and ultimately what it comes down to is 5 people, the ultimate say in what is constitutional. I disagree with that. I think there should be an override for that, or a veto, a check and a balance on that power. I think the reason why there isn't a check and a balance on that power, by the way, is because the whole concept of judicial review, where they decide what is constitutional and what is not, it was taken. It was never granted to them by the people. The Supreme Court invented this ability, this new power, and they gave it to themselves. There is no constitutional power for the Supreme Court to determine what is constitutional or not, which is oddly enough, it's interesting because no one ever granted them that authority. They took it for themselves, and now they tell us what is constitutional and what's not, even though they're doing something that is not in the Constitution at all. Now, I don't have any problem with them being an arbiter of what is constitutional, but I have an issue with them being the final say in all things constitutional because they work for the federal government, and that's just not a good place for the buck to stop. The federal government, the centralization of power, is always going to try to grow their own power. So the buck should stop at I would say, either the lowest point or the halfway point. And I think the halfway point is the states, the lowest point is the individual. I think it'd be difficult, and I don't want to necessarily put up state disputes to a majority vote amongst the nation. I don't think it should come down to, because then that could be the tyranny of the majority. I think one way that they should be able to do this, especially if we're talking about interstate disputes, if the federal government is going to step in and start telling one state what they have to do, using coercive force, again, that's what government is. Even if it's a government dealing with a government, it's still coercive force. If they're telling you what you have to do, they're forcing you to do that. So I think that a check and a balance on that power should be a state majority override. If 51% of the states say that they don't agree with the ruling, they can nullify the ruling. That's my personal opinion. As far as I can tell, that seems to be the best way to go about it. But this is the way I look at it. I mean, the federal government should be so minuscule, so streamlined that you barely notice it. You shouldn't be able to see it in your everyday life. The federal government should be hard to spot, but instead it's everywhere. From how much water you're allowed to have in your toilet, from the kind of light bulbs that you can have in your house, to the college that you go to because they fund it, and to the roads that you drive on because they're funding that as well. I mean, every single aspect of your life. The electricity in your house is regulated by the federal government. I'm telling you, there's nothing that you can touch that is not regulated by the federal government. The paper that I'm holding in my hand has some regulations on it by the feds. This microphone I'm talking to you is regulated somehow, some way by the federal government. They're everywhere. It shouldn't be how it is. And again, these regulations that are put on everything, they don't help the little guy. They don't control the big guy. What they do is they make it impossible for the little guy to navigate, and they make it easy for the big guys, the big corporate interest, to snuff out their competition. That's how monopolies are created. And I think that government in general is just it's a coercive force, and we should not put all of our faith and trust in it, and we should try our best to hedge it back as far as possible. That's why I consider myself a minarchist. It's minimal government, almost anarchy when it comes to federal government. I don't have any problem with the states running their states however the hell they want. If you want to run your state, as long as you're not violating people's rights, I don't have any issue with that. As long as you have a constitutional Bill of Rights, and as far as the way things were founded, by the way, as far as I understand it. Now, I understand things have changed, but the way I understand the Bill of Rights to work upon the founding was that it was supposed to restrict the federal government from doing all the things in the Bill of Rights. It was supposed to restrict the First through 10th Amendment. All those things are the rights that the federal government can't restrict, but it says nothing to the states, which is why the states had their own constitution as well. So state constitutions were equally as important because they were supposed to limit what the state and local government could not do. And you have a hell of a lot of an easier chance of affecting change in your state and local government, as citizens inside that government. You can change your state government a whole lot easier than you can the federal government because there's a lot more people at play there. So, for example, let's look at what's going on in Ohio. They're literally trying to do constitutional amendments through citizens initiative ballots, and these are going up to vote by the citizens. They completely bypass the legislature on this, and it's changing their constitution. So this is an example of why state governance works. The people of the state, they can run their state however the hell they want. They can, if you want to have a state that respects your rights, put a Bill of Rights in the Constitution of your state, and boom, you've got like a similar setup to what we have in our federal Constitution. And by the way, most of the state constitutions have a similar setup as what is in our federal Constitution. So most of them have the same. I mean, every single one of them has a protection for freedom of speech, and I think at least a small carve out, at least in every state. For the Second Amendment, for the right to keep and bear arms. Now they may stipulate and change the words, and some are harder harder on it than others. But I think all of them typically have that, and also I think unlawful search and seizure, stuff like that. So all states have these kind of things, these protections for the citizenry against their state and local government, which I think they should. But the great thing about having states govern themselves is that this is a giant experiment. We have 50 experiments, 50 states going on at one time. I've used this example before, but these states will be able to govern the way that they want. And number one, if they are successful or a failure, the other states will be able to look at these states and learn from them what made them be successful. Let's copy and emulate that. What made them fail? Well, let's avoid doing that because that didn't work out too well for them. So that's a good point. And then additionally, if they do fail, all right, if a state fails and it's in economic collapse and disarray and they're having a hard time, first of all, you're going to have to face the storm, weather the storm that you created. I don't think that the federal government should step in and bail them out. Again, it's redistribution of wealth. It's taking money from everyone else in the states and giving it to other people. Now, if people want to, as a collective, as a group of people, you want to organize and say, hey, all right, let's do something for these people. They're struggling over there. Let's, do a food drive, give them food, blah, 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 supplies, whatever. If they have a natural disaster, we can organize and help them out. There are our neighbors as well. We're all Americans. And by the way, we're the most giving nation on the planet. We give more in charity by far than any other nation on the planet. So the idea that we need the federal government to give money, to people and decide who merits our money is ridiculous. We are already and still always have been generous and willing to give to those who need money or need help, need food. We are open hearts. But as far as dealing with government, this is one thing I was talking earlier about, lessons we learned as a kid. The idea that it's not fair that somebody is underprivileged and somebody can't afford to, for example, buy food. Okay, food stamps. The idea that that is wrong. There is inequality, and we need to make it right. All right. We learned very young, at least I did. I remember my mom pounding this into my head. Two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. I remember sitting on this couch, and Mom, if you're listening out there, I remember sitting on these couches in my living room, looking across at my sister, angry as all hell, because she did something to me, and then I did something to her, or vice versa, and I refused to apologize. My mom made me sit on this couch until I would apologize, and my sister would apologize to me. We had to apologize to each other. And we're sitting on this couch angry at each other. And my mom says, well, what'd she do? And what'd you do? Well, two wrongs don't make a right. This is a lesson I learned as a kid. As a kid, I think we all learned this lesson. So apply this to somebody who can't buy their food. Two wrongs don't make a right. All right? There's already one wrong that the person, it sucks that the person can't afford to buy their food. But it is also wrong to steal from others to give him that food. Two wrongs don't make a right. It just lowers your moral standards. Two wrongs don't make a right. So we need to limit government. We need government to be as low as humanly possible. There will be people that will give. We are in no short supply of people that have big open hearts. That's the one thing in this country that we have in spades is big open hearts. And even the people on the left, the people that are these do-gooders, these are the people, by the way, that I'm the most concerned about. That taking away our rights and all the other things that these people want to do, the do-gooders on the left, they have big open hearts too. They just don't want to see anyone suffering. And I get it. I understand. I don't want to see that either. Which is exactly why people will do it on their own. You don't need the government to coercively force them to. And I don't think anybody gets any credit when the government forces us to. There's something to be said about that good feeling you get when you do something nice for somebody else. You don't get that good feeling, by the way, when the government takes your money coercively and then does something like that on your behalf. You don't get that good feeling. In fact, in many cases, it creates resentment towards the people that now are benefiting from your hard-earned money. Anywho, so this is why we need to limit the government. And, the concept here, this leads us to our next feature topic, is that we cannot pretend that evil people do not exist in the world. Evil people clearly exist. We cannot pretend that they do not exist. And on the left and the right, both sides like to pretend that there is no evil. And let me explain. I will explain specifically. Most of the left, the statist left, they believe that there's no evil, but greed is evil. And that a powerful government is the answer. They don't understand that powerful governments have killed more people in history than any other unnatural force. So, all we have to do is look at China, what happened with the Great Leap Forward. 27 million people died from the famine caused by the redistribution of land, where the government took land from landowners. By the way, they killed 1 to 3 million landowners in that process. And then after that, 27 million died because, now people aren't growing food. Now there's a famine. So 30 million people died just in that great leap forward, ironically named, by the way. And the left, they create this superstructure of power and authority, the statist Leviathan that people are praying at the altar to, and they don't believe that it could ever be used for some kind of tyrannical or evil purpose. They don't make the connection. They don't get it. They either deny that it would ever happen, or they don't even acknowledge that it could. They don't even think of it as an option, like it could never happen. And on the right, the further right, I would say, is on the libertarian side. Believe that if we just open our borders and we engage in free trade with everyone, we're going to have no enemies. If we stop trying to influence other people's societies, and there is some merit to this argument. When we start interconnecting our economies and things along those lines, that you're less likely to attack somebody if attacking that person will hurt you economically. There is some merit to that. However, it doesn't stop crazy, and it doesn't stop evil. And this is the thing that I'm talking about here, is that evil exists. There's people, and by the way, as much as you may like the fact that Putin has been sticking his thumb in Obama's eye and making him look stupid, Putin's not a good guy. Putin is a bad guy. He's an evil oligarch. I'm sorry. I mean, he's trying to put the band back together of the Soviet Union, and he's an expansionist. He's trying to expand his influence in his country. And this is a difference between, we were talking earlier, I think I mentioned this show. Maybe I'm just remembering from show prep. American exceptionalism, this is the difference between American exceptionalism and nationalism, okay? What is American exceptionalism? What is nationalism? A nationalism is basically our country is better than yours, and we're going to spread it. Our way of life, everything about us is better than you are, and we're gonna spread our culture. We're gonna take more land. We're gonna attack people and become their sovereigns, their superior, because we're better. We're entitled to it. We're better than you. That's nationalistic, and there's that element, I think, inside the Putin's regime, of where he thinks that he is entitled to the territory that was lost during the fall of the Soviet Union, and more. I believe that there is more that he feels that he's entitled to, and he's going to actively work towards it, whether or not it economically hurts him or not. There are levels that he's prepared to levels of pain that he's prepared to face in order to meet his goals. So, I kind of look at this whole thing as maybe I'm a nerd and maybe you guys won't get this reference, but I look at it like Game of Thrones. If you watch the show, all the world is but a stage. People are continuing to fight for power. There are people like us who just want to be left the hell alone, and we just want to live our lives and not be screwed with. We don't want somebody coming in trying to tell us what to do with their lives. But there are also people that are playing this Game of Thrones who want to get power, and they want the power to control you. They want the power over people. And they won't be happy with what they have. They always want more. It's always a little bit more power. It's like when J.P. Morgan was asked, how much more money do you need? You're already a billionaire. And he said, just a little more. They'll never be happy until they have it all. They want world domination, and that's the thing. You either are going to live in a world where this evil exists, or you have to snuff it out entirely and dominate the world. And that's where some people on the right side of this, on the political right side, the hawks, you think, and even General Patton. He believed that Russia was going to be a threat in the future. He was right about the threat, and that we should attack them after World War II. I mentioned this last show, I think, and that's important to note. You can't go around just being the aggressor, even if you think that you're right, unless somebody does something. Until they do, you cannot just preemptively attack everyone and conquer the world and say, all right, now we're free to be free, because there is no threat anymore. You can't do that. So we, as America, we have this little isolated, continent over here where we have very limited exposure to what's going on in most of the world. Most of the world, not all. But we can't put our head in the sand and pretend that evil people don't exist. Which is why I think that we do need a military. We do need to have common defense. We need a federal government for that purpose. That purpose. because there are people out there playing this Game of Thrones, and evil people seek power. And we also have to keep in mind that those evil people can exist here in our country, and they could be trying to get that power as well. You know, that they could be conniving and making deals in the shadows and all that stuff, and it's going on now. All of these things are happening now. You know, all you have to do is look, for example, at the establishment Republicans. You know, they're all about the party. It's all about political power. It's all about the Game of Thrones. They don't really stand for anything except for their power and their party, which helps them stay in power. But we can't pretend, either left or right, that evil doesn't exist. Evil exists, and it will always be there. It's not going away. You know, the thing about it is that we have to acknowledge that the human condition exists for evil, for bad in this world, and not allow the infrastructure for the evil to take root, the evil to control us. We have to refuse to be governed. We have to refuse to face tyranny. And again, I'm not an anarchist, but it seems like the further I dive into this rabbit hole, the closer I get to it. You know, what is American exceptionalism, and what's the difference between American exceptionalism and nationalism? All right, nationalism is, again, as I said, it's the idea that we're better than you and we're going to expand. It's Russia. It's Putin's expansionism, where, you know, we are owed certain things. We are superior. We are owed and entitled to this territory, to this land. We're going to take it. It's the caliphate with Islam. They're entitled to the world. You know, that they believe that the scripture has foretold that they will have control, and a caliphate will spread across the world. It'll be a worldwide caliphate. So that in a way is nationalism as well. And even, you know, George W. Bush's democracy project, where, you know, you're trying to spread democracy, which, by the way, we are not. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic with some democratic tendencies, but we're not a democracy. We have representatives that we elect to do our legislation in Congress. Granted, we also have initiative ballot processes, but again, that's why I say democratic tendencies. But all of those, the idea of spreading your way of life, either through force or coercion, that is nationalism. But what is American exceptionalism? And I may have mentioned this before on the show. It's basically our adherence to values and ideas. It's the ideas of personal responsibility, the values of individual right. We want the freedom to make our own mistakes. We're not expecting a government safety net around every corner. You know, the idea and the concept that we own ourselves. We own the spoils of our efforts. No one owns you, and no one can force you to work for free, work for something that you don't agree with, that what you labor and what you make, you own. American exceptionalism is also small government and the least amount of governmental coercion as possible. You know, it's dangerous when we start having fellow patriots or so-called patriots who espouse to be, you know, constitutionalists, who espouse to be people who respect individual rights. But then they hold objects like the American flag above that of the freedoms that they actually represent. So we've talked about this before, flag burning and things. Though I think it's rude. Though I think it's distasteful. It's not something that I would engage in. I do not put the flag, the value of the flag, over that of the value of the freedom of expression that it represents. So I would never call for someone to be arrested for it. I would never call for a law to be against that, anything along those lines. But this is what we see sometimes in the patriot community. Sometimes we have patriots calling for, you know, people to be arrested or beat up or whatever for burning flags. Look, I get it. I get why you're offended, and I am too. But you know, that's why we have protected speech in the country, because, you know, if it wasn't offensive, if there was no such thing as offensive speech, if everybody agreed with all the speech being said, then we wouldn't need it to be protected in the first place. The kind of speech that needs to be protected is the kind that people are offended by, because that's the kind that people will try to silence and censor. Anyway, we're going to cut to another commercial break. When we come back, I want to get to some of the just general articles in the news and some stories that are going on that I want to point your attention to. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Let's go ahead and move right into the next segment of the show. I want to talk about some of these articles that I've accumulated here, things that we need to take a look at, things I want to highlight. First and foremost, let's talk about Hillary Clinton. She said that an Australian gun ban is worth looking at. This is in an article on, I think this is Breitbart. Yeah, Breitbart.com. It is written on, of course, Breitbart always has a bunch of pop-ups. Here we go. It's written by, I love this person's name because I can never say it, R. Hawkins, A-W-R Hawkins. R. I think that's how you say it. And if anybody knows how to actually say this name, please let me know. I would love to know the pronunciation of this, because I see this name on like every Breitbart article I read on here. So anyway, the article is titled "Hillary Clinton, Australian Gun Ban Worth Looking At in U.S." During an October 16th town hall meeting at Keene State must be K-E-E-N, Keene State College, Democrat presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton said Australia's confiscation of firearms via a national buyback provides a good example for how other countries responded to mass shootings. And she said, it's worth looking at, when considering gun policy in the U.S. Sorry, if my voices are distracting, I apologize. I know how Hillary Clinton's voice is kind of a farce when I do it, but I just can't stand it. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me listening to her talk. Anyway, Clinton made these statements in response to a questioner who asked if we could ban handgun ownership in the U.S. Reading from a card, the elderly questioner asked, regarding handguns, Australia recently managed to take away tens of thousands, even millions of handguns, and in 1 year, they were all gone. Can we do that? And if we can't, why can't we? Hillary replied, Australia's a good example. Canada's a good example. I'm not going to do that. This is a big paragraph. And the UK is a good example. Why? Because each of them had mass killings. Australia had a huge mass killing about 20 or 25 years ago. Canada did as well. So did the UK. In reaction, they passed much stricter gun laws. In the Australian example, as I recall, that was a buyback program. The Australian government, as part of trying to clamp down on the availability of weapons, offered a good price for buying hundreds of thousands of guns and basically clamped down on going forward in terms of having more of a background check approach, more of a permitting approach. Okay. So you can read the rest of the article if you want. Again, that's Breitbart.com. The article is titled Hillary Clinton Australian Gun Ban Worth Looking At in U.S. So let's look at some of the things she said here. First of all, I think it's important to note that the left continues to tell us that and tell you that no one's coming after your guns. No one. No one at all is coming after your guns. No one's talking about a confiscation. No one's talking about any of this crap. You guys are just crazy. You're clingers. You're bitter clingers, clinging to your guns and your Bibles. And oh, man, you're just so stupid. No one's coming after your guns. Okay, first of all, a lie. They clearly are coming after your guns. They want your guns. They don't trust you with your guns. But let's point out the moral question here, okay? The moral question. I like to always go to the moral question because, especially when you start saying that you're doing things for the greater good, as the left likes to do that, they like to say that they're doing things for the good of everyone, the collective good of everyone. And it's moral. What they're doing, they're saying is moral. So let's attack the moral argument. First, number one is that these people that you're violating their rights on, not only is that, number one, a constitutional right that is protected, and you're not actually asking or recommending a repeal of the Second Amendment. What you're saying is just an outright violation of the Second Amendment. Okay, unconstitutional. Whatever, I guess that doesn't matter. But even if you did, the natural right to defend oneself will always exist, and it doesn't matter what the Constitution or the government says. None of that crap matters. But what does matter, okay, is the moral argument of this is that people are dying. People are dying from gun violence, and we need to just get all the guns out of our community. So by an outright confiscation of this, a buyback program, what they're doing is they're saying that it's okay to steal your money, all right, and your gun, because that's what they're doing. They're stealing it. They're stealing your gun, and they're using your own money to pay for it. They're giving you money, and let's be serious, they're not going to give you what you want for your gun, because if you said, I'm not selling my gun to you, they're going to take it. So the only actual market price, the only actual fair price to pay for somebody, to pay somebody for their object that you're going to trade, is to pay them what they want for it in order to give it up. But they're not going to do it. It's compulsory transactions, it's a violation of your rights to begin with, a compulsory transaction. It's not a transaction at all. It's theft. And it's theft with your own money because they're paying you with tax money that they took from you. So, okay, you're being hurt on two fronts. You're losing out on tax money, and they're taking your gun away, your physical gun. This is your property, your private property that you have a right to constitutionally, a natural right to, whether or not what the Constitution says. But I digress. Also, and something that I find particularly interesting here is that this will lead to the point of where they try to take away all your guns, and they turn all these law-abiding citizens that were they're creating no victims, they're not hurting others, and they're not depriving anybody of their rights. They just have a possession that they're unwilling to give up because it allows them to defend themselves properly. And again, the government doesn't have a duty to protect you, so that's your job, and the government isn't responsible for it, nor are they doing a good job at it. Just look at what happened with the Boston bombing. We're told, give up all your rights, the government will protect you, but stuff like that still happens. NSA spying on every human electronic communication, and they couldn't stop that from happening. So why are we giving them more power, more control, more responsibility when they refuse to be responsible and held responsible if anything happens to you? So, let's go back. The people that are completely law-abiding otherwise, other than this law that was penned that completely violated the Constitution, now these people are now criminals, okay? And the whole reason for doing this was that people are dying. People are dying. Oh, so many people are dying every year. Well, let's be realistic. The people that die in mass shootings are a very small percentage of the amount of people that are killed with gun violence. Usually what happens, if you look at the statistics, FBI statistics, is most of the people who die in gun violence, and again, let's be clear, suicides are not gun violence. Suicides are somebody just taking their own life. That's not violent. That's not a violence. A violence is somebody, inflicting harm on another person. That is violence. Somebody harming themselves, that's a choice that they made. You can't stop somebody from killing themselves. There's no way. If somebody's determined to kill himself, they're going to do it no matter what law you pass. It doesn't matter. They'll find a way. I'm not going to fall into this trap. I'm not going to list all the ways this time. Usually every time I do this, I start saying, "Oh, you can kill yourself this way or that way." I'm not going to do that this time. But the point being, the moral argument is that at the core of this argument that we have to take away all the guns out of our society because, bad people are killing people. People are dying. The number is minuscule. Just keep that in mind. It's very small, comparatively speaking, to the amount of deaths from criminals attacking people with guns, okay? So that number in comparison is small. But how many people do you think will die if there's a confiscation and people don't want to give up their guns? Now, there may not be a culture of resistance in places like Canada, the UK, Australia. I don't know what their psyche is like over there, but I do know here in America that people are willing to die for their right to keep and bear arms, myself included. I would literally die for my right to keep and bear arms, and for your right. That was one of the reasons I joined the military, was to protect. I wanted to serve my country. I was prepared to die for others. I still am. The concept of them turning completely law-abiding citizens into criminals with a stroke of a pen, and then being willing to, again, and we covered this on a previous episode, laws can kill. The enforcement of laws can kill. So being willing to kick in somebody's door and fight to kill them, to take away their gun that was not being used in a crime, not being used to hurt anybody else, you're going to result in murders. People will die. Again, look at Eric Gardner, for crying out loud. The guy was killed because he was selling loose cigarettes on the sidewalk in front of a store. And why was he killed? Because the government wanted their tax cut. And they sent their enforcers out to stop him from doing that. And in the result, he died. He died in the struggle. He resisted the police physically. He said, "I'm not going with you anywhere, guys." And they did what they did, all right? Again, you're not going to win a physical confrontation with police or the government. More people will come. More government will come. But again, what these kind of gun control policies, complete gun bans, will lead to is people dying. So their entire foundation, the core of their moral argument, is that we need to take away these guns because people are dying. Well, if you do that, people are going to die, and people that weren't criminals to begin with. Are you really prepared to do that? Because if so, your argument, your entire moral argument is gone because you're prepared to kill people who disagree with you. I think I pretty much took that apart as well as anyone could do. There are some other areas. You know what? I'll leave that to the ether. Let's move on. Let's go to another conversation I'd like to get to here. There was a conservative meetup at a restaurant that ended with a swarm of police, helicopters. This is from newsfoxes.com, I believe. And anyway, this was a meetup. They were having a meetup at a local bar and grill. And the management knew that everyone at this meetup, it was a political meetup, and they knew that it was about. So anyway, this Arizona-based readers of Breitbart News News being engaged and passionate about issues like border security, decided to take their online community to a personal level and began a local meetup, from like the meetup website, groups in their area to get to know each other better. After the first meetup, it was a great success. They chose K. O'Donnell's, a restaurant in Phoenix, as their site for the next meeting, inviting several well-known conservative figures as guest speakers. Topics discussed that night range from gun rights to border issues to freedom concerns in America. Yeah, these guys are terrorists, man. The police definitely should have just swarmed in and threw everybody on the ground. And if I was a leftist, I would say they should have just executed them all there on the spot. But let's practice a little restraint. Let's just lock them in jail for the rest of their lives, right? Anyway, the attendees were ordering drinks and food, enjoying networking with other like-minded patriots when suddenly things turned into complete chaos. So, long story short, I'll boil this down to you. And if you guys want to read the entire article, there's a clip of what happened. It's on newsfoxes.com. The article is titled "Conservative Group Meetup at Bar Ends with Swarm of Police and Helicopters." So, long story short, what happened is somebody in the restaurant complained to the management, and after the management heard about what happened, allegedly, they called the police. Apparently they said that they were threatened by some of the people in the group or something. And granted, I'm not there. I don't know what happened. But according to the video, this did not seem like an unruly crowd. You can watch the video for yourself. It seems very telling that this was just a political gathering. It was a bunch of people that were just out there to talk about this. And somebody in attendance in this restaurant got offended, told the management, and the management lied to the police that somebody in this group was threatening. The police came. They realized that nothing was going on that was unruly. None of the stuff that they were told was happening was in fact happening. The manager had actually said that, let's see, another attendee, Wilson P., posted, the event started out fine. After things got going, apparently one of the non-Breitbart customers got offended over the content of the program and complained to the management. The manager claimed they were attacked and threatened by someone in our group, so they called the police, claiming 200 unruly patrons. I personally spoke to the sergeant who responded to the with the other numerous officers and Phoenix PD helicopter, and he was so apologetic after realizing it was all about nothing. Had the manager actually been assaulted and threatened, don't you think someone would have been arrested? Obviously they lied. Otherwise, I met some really nice people and look forward to the next event. Hopefully no police next time or uninformed liberal idiots. So, interesting article. I recommend you guys check it out. But this just goes to highlight what I'm talking about. Left, the political left, the statist left, they claim that things like free speech are important when they're using their speech. They would not want to be silenced. They would not want to be shut down. But they have no problem using the Leviathan to shut you down. They have no problem turning this Leviathan on you, and they fail to understand. They just fail to grasp the concept that the Constitution isn't this outdated document that they seem to think it is. They get to live under its protection every single day. The entire point is that they get to make their own mind up and have their own opinions, and they get to be able to freely express themselves, which is, by the way, part of the reason why we've gotten to this point of where the state has grown so big. The lefts, they've been able to espouse their political beliefs. They've been able to say things that they believe in as far as growing big government, and we've gotten further and further, closer and closer towards socialism, communism, statism, because the left has been able to say their opinion. They've been able to flourish under this as far as they're concerned, but they want to silence our speech. Again, the Constitution is not an outdated document. It's still relevant every single day. The fact that you're sitting here listening to me talk, you're able to listen to me tell you my opinion, which is something I would not be allowed to do if it wasn't for the protection of the Constitution. Now, granted, that right still exists. You have a right as a free-thinking individual, as a person who owns themselves, to be able to express your thoughts, use your voice how you choose. The government can never take away that right. They may not honor it, but the right will still exist. So, we got some other interesting stuff that I would like to get to here. Let's see, we got a professor on campus carry. Women cannot use guns effectively, all right? So this is another Breitbart article, and this one is written by, what do you know, R. Hawkins, dated 21 October 2015. The article is titled, Law Professor on Campus Carry. Women Can't Use Guns Effectively. During October 20th testimony on campus carry legislation currently under consideration by Florida lawmakers, University of Miami law professor Mary Ann Franks contended that allowing women to be armed for self-defense will not accomplish much because they cannot use guns effectively. According to the Herald Tribune, Franks argued that guns are highly effective when they are being used for crimes, but rarely effective in preventing them. And she suggested the idea that women will not be able to stop sexual assault with a gun. She suggested that the idea that women will be able to stop a sexual assault with a gun is simply not realistic. She claimed that armed women will will not be successful because most victims of such assault know their attackers. She said the only way arming a woman will help is if the woman plans on going out on a date with her hand on a gun. The Tallahassee Democrat quoted Franks saying, "Studies done by many professionals have shown that it is really, really unlikely for anyone to use a gun effectively in self-defense, especially in cases of sexual assault." Now, first of all, I happen to know several people that have used their guns defensively. Thank goodness I've never had to. I know people that have actually had to fire their weapons defensively. I've known people that have had to just pull their weapon out and the crime, the reason why they had their gun out in the first place, had actually stopped. We've covered on this show several instances where a armed citizen has prevented mass shootings. And one of those was the Clackamas Town Center shooting, the mall shooting, where the armed citizen pulled out his gun, and just the visual presence of somebody with a gun made that armed murderer, that psychopath, run away and kill himself. Okay, because these people are cowards, and I find it, first of all, incredibly ridiculous that they're making a distinction between a woman and a man using a gun. I personally know women who I would be terrified to be on the wrong end of that gun with them. There are women that make me look like a horrible shot, and I like to consider myself a pretty good shot. But there are women that make me look like I don't know what I'm doing behind a gun. So, first of all, I highly disagree. And women out there, I'm curious, what do you think? Do you think that this woman is right? Does this Mary Ann Franks of Miami law professor, does she speak for you? Do you really not have the ability to defend yourself? Do you really agree with this? She's saying that you can't defend yourself. It's not possible for you to defend yourself. Let's just avoid. We'll come back. We'll put a pin in the sexual assault conversation. All right. But just for self-defense, we already know University of Florida study says that firearms are used millions. I think it was 2 or 3 million, if I'm remembering correctly, times per year defensively. And the idea that you can't use a gun in self-defense effectively, well, that's the entire idea of what our military is arming people for the purpose of defending ourselves, our nation. So I would disagree with that. Guns do save lives. That's the entire idea of what the police are. All police are people out on the streets, civilians out on the streets with guns there to protect people, supposedly. So, again, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And now let's pull the pin out of the sexual assault question for women. I have heard of several stories. I've covered them here on our show where women were being targeted for violence, for sexual assault, and they have pulled their firearms out and used them in defense. So, first of all, it does happen. But let's twist this argument around and use the left's argument. You know how they say if they take away all the guns and if it just saves one life, it'll be worth it. Well, if a gun just saves one life, it's worth it. So that's where I stand. If one person is able to use their gun, I don't care if 99% of all other people cannot use their gun defensively. If 99% of them fail to somehow pull the gun out and stop the crime and defend themselves, if 99% fail, but only 1% succeed, it's worth it. It's worth it. That's the way I look at it. And moreover, we don't have the right to restrict this right. Again, the reason why the government was created was to protect and defend our rights. All right, that was the reason. They've obfuscated their responsibility. They've shrugged that responsibility off. They no longer have that responsibility, and they no longer respect that position that they have. Now, what they think their job is to rule us, to take away our rights, tell us what to do, how we're going to live our life, take no responsibility for any of their actions, lie to us, steal from us, decide who's going to win, makes crony capitalist deals, and increase their power, only care about their power, don't worry about the little guys that they're tromping on. I'll tell you what the great equalizer in all of this is: a gun. A gun. Smith & Wesson is the greatest equalizer on the planet. It takes somebody who is not physically capable of defending themselves. You could have an elderly woman, 106 years old, not being able to defend herself from a 20-year-old man attacker, and then put a gun in her hand, and the situation is dramatically different, especially if she knows how to use it. But that's something that the left and the statist Leviathan, they don't like. The statists out there, they hate the fact when you empower people, when you give the people the ability to defend themselves, to take personal responsibility, take control over their lives, instead of dishing it over to the government. They hate that. They absolutely loathe that. And this is just another one of those circumstances. Again, none of this makes any sense, but the left continues to perpetuate it. And again, they tell us no one's after your guns, that we're just being ridiculous, and that we need to compromise. Well, I say we've compromised enough. We've gotten to the point now. I mean, look at where we are. We've compromised enough. We have given up more and more of our rights, and it's gotten us nowhere. Again, the left's answer is that, look, you just need to give a little bit. We're going to fix the problem using the government. The statists, they believe that the government is the answer. And so what do? We create a background check system. Oh, okay, well, yeah, it makes sense. We don't want criminals getting the guns. Instead of answering the real problem that criminals are on the street to begin with, violent people who have the ability and they pose a risk to society, violent people are out on the streets. Those people should be locked away and segregated from society, not allowed to re-enter society again. Instead, we're felonizing everything. Everything's a felony now. So now, again, people are not being made whole when other criminals, non-violent criminals, are stealing things from them. All right, and they're double penalized. The victims are of theft and things like that. They're being penalized again through taxation of having to house this individual, rather than forcing that individual to make that person whole again. The person is hurt twice. But then in addition to that, we are changing what it is to be a felon. All right, everything's a felony now, whether or not there's a victim or not. So now we're filling our prison system with non-violent felons, and in order to make room for these people, because they have a quick turnaround time when compared to felons that just stay there forever, we make more money on people that are constantly rotating in the system, 2 or 3 year bids in the system. So we make a lot more money off of that when we're rotating them in and out, in and out. So we're filling our system full of these nonviolent felons, and in order to make room for all these nonviolent felons, we got to get rid of the hardened criminals, which go back on our streets. And now because of that, we have to pass background checks, which do nothing because criminals don't submit to those. The only people that do are the law-abiding citizens. So now we have to use the government to create another problem, or fix another problem to create, and then ends up creating another problem again. Now we go further, and for universal background checks, now you don't have a right to sell your personal private property. Now you need the government to track you. Eventually, it'll just keep going. Now we need to treat every single person as a criminal and conduct a background check on them. Even though there's no reasonable suspicion or probable cause, we need to do that. In addition, things will start to get so bad where they start, we need to treat everybody like they're criminals and search their houses after we have a confiscation and make sure that they don't have guns. Forget the Fourth Amendment. You don't have a right for the government not to look into your home. We got to make sure that criminals don't have the guns. But yet the criminals will still have the guns, and then after a complete confiscation, the law-abiding citizens won't have the guns. Only the criminals will. And we'll see, all we have to do is look at Chicago. They took the guns away from the law-abiding citizens, and it's almost the murder capital of the world. I'm pretty sure it's damn close. Government creates the problem. They cannot be the solution to the problem they create. They will only create more problems. Anyway, I want to end with one final thought here. Any of you out there a Jeb Bush fan? Anybody? I don't know if anybody out there is, but the two roles of government we've already talked about. managing the foreign affairs and settling interstate disputes. Jeb Bush, he seems to think that they have another role. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go to this article here. It's a HuffPost piece, HuffingtonPost.com, written by Sam Levine. The article is titled "Jeb Bush: Fantasy Sports Should Be Regulated." Here's a clip.
Bush, daily fantasy sports has become a phenomenon in this country. We'll award billions of dollars in prize money this year, but to play you have to assess your odds, put money at risk, wait for an outcome that's out of your control. Isn't that the definition of gambling, and should the federal government treat it as such?
Well, first of all, I'm 7-0 in my fantasy football league.
I had a feeling you were going to brag about that.
Gronkowski is still going strong. I have Ryan Marco as my quarterback. He was 18 for 19 last week. So I'm doing great, but we're not gambling. And I think this has become something that needs to be looked at in terms of regulation. Effectively, it's day trading without any regulation at all.
All right, so this is a big government progressive Republican, everybody, just like his father, just like his brother. They are progressives. Again, this is a very simple concept. The government does not need to grow. It needs to shrink. The bigger the government is, the bigger the tax burden on the people, which means more theft out of your pocket. You want as little government as possible in order to really have a free society. In order to resolve these issues, let the free market resolve. The free market is far more effective at fixing problems and coming up with solutions than the government ever could be. Because again, first of all, the government is ineffective. The government will lie to you. The government will steal from you. All right? We've already talked about Social Security, how they've done that. In addition to that, the government is extremely wasteful. And lastly, the government will not solve the problem. They'll create another one, or 10 other ones, or 50 other ones. It'll have a ripple effect that will totally alter everything about society if you let them. If you let them just continue to do gooder their way through everything. They are trying to fix a problem and ruin it in the process. They're like a clumsy mechanic. Just a guy who's really well-intentioned. Actually, let's change the metaphor here. It's like me, all right? I know just enough about computers to get me in trouble. And I've often had this situation happen to me where somebody's asked me to fix their computer or take a look at this, and maybe I know a little bit about it, but usually what happens is I screw it up worse than it ever was before. I have good intentions. I'm trying to help you, and I was just trying to set up your printer, but now I've took down the entire power grid on the Eastern Seaboard. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know what I was doing. I made a mistake. Anyway, Jeb Bush, he thinks that the government, the feds, should be regulating fantasy sports.
And when you have insider information, which apparently has been the case, where people use that information, use big data to try to take advantage of it, there has to be some regulation. If they can't regulate themselves, then the NFL needs to look at this, moving away from them a little bit, and there should be some regulation. I have no clue whether the federal government's the proper place. My instinct is to say hell no, just about everything about the federal government.
Well, his instinct just a second ago was like, well, if the NFL can't do it, then maybe the feds should take over it. But, here's, I think, one of the best moments I've ever seen with Chris Christie, who I don't like, who I don't agree with on so many issues, one of which being his stance on global warming, the fact that he thinks it's man-made. It very well could be, but the point is there's not enough information. We have no way of knowing it. The science is not there. It's not settled. But anyway, Chris Christie, he goes on, and this is one of the first times I've actually agreed with Chris Christie in a while. Here he goes.
Government.
Hold on, I need to interject.
Carl, are we really talking? So here,
Carl,
are we really talking about getting government involved in fantasy football? Wait a second. We have $19 trillion in debt. We have people out of work. We have ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacking us. And we're talking about fantasy football?
Yeah, and anyway, there's a whole lot more that happened in the GOP debate. But let me just tell you guys my take overall on this whole CNBC, incredibly biased. I would like to go through and actually comment some more about some of the topics that were covered, some of the points of view that were illustrated from some of the candidates. I think Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Carson, they all had pretty good performances. Carly Fiorina, she was all right. She did pretty good. I think that Bush and Trump both were mediocre at best, but I disagree with them on policy. But I think their followers will, won't shy too far away based upon their performance. But I don't think that they had any breakaway performance. But I think Ted Cruz and Marco kind of stood out. I think most people would agree with me on that one. But anyway, that's the end of the show. We're wrapping up for today. Don't forget to check us out on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, here at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And first of all, I just want to say a big shout out to Tom McKirkin for calling into the show. I hope you guys, if you are in Oregon, you check out the Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance. And again, please, if you made it this far on the show, share the program. I would certainly appreciate that. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.